sa lahat. Welcome to all participants. A pleasant morning to all. A warm welcome to this morning's Linangan webinar entitled Teach Talk Understanding the Self edition. I'm Ruth Lusterio Rico, and I'm a professor of political science and associate dean for academic affairs of the University of the Philippines, Diliman. Of the College of Social Sciences and Philosophy of UP Diliman. And I will be your moderator this morning. I will be joined by Mr. Chris Tarka, who will be my co-moderator. To formally begin our webinar, I would like to invite our Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs, Dr. Maria Teresa T. Payongayong, to give her welcome message for all of us. Visites.
Thank you very much, Professor Ruth Lusterio Rico. Maganda umaga po sa lahat. Maraming salamat po sa panahon na inyong inilaan upang makinig sa ating mga tagapagsalita ngayong araw. Under its Charter of 2008 or RA 9500, UP is mandated to perform its unique and distinctive leadership in higher education and development. This mandate includes, and I quote, leading in setting academic standards and initiating innovations in teaching, research, and faculty development in philosophy, the arts and humanities, the social sciences, engineering, natural sciences, mathematics, and technology, and maintain centers of excellence in these disciplines and professions. UP is further mandated to serve as a graduate university by providing advanced studies and specialization for scholars, scientists, writers, artists, and professionals, especially those who serve on the faculty of state and private colleges and universities. It also serves as a research university in various fields of expertise and specialization by conducting basic and applied research, promoting research and development, and contributing to the dissemination and application of knowledge. UP serves as a leader in public service and extension work by providing various forms of community, public, and volunteer service, as well as scholarly and technical assistance to the government, the private sector, and civil society while maintaining its standards of excellence. Now, end of quote. In fulfilling UP's mandate, it is important that its course offerings are quality assured, regularly reviewed and updated, and whenever possible, shared with our colleagues from SUCs and LUCs. This Linangan series is an innovative way of sharing our general education or GE courses with you. We started with Teach Talk on Kasaysayan ng Pilipinas held last September 6, and today we shall listen to another talk on understanding the self. Per the UP Diliman Faculty Manual, the General Education Program is a mix of subjects that gives students knowledge and competencies that will better prepare them for the basic understanding of the various ways of knowing. This makes students well-rounded persons ready for lifelong learning skills. It further states that the liberal education thrust of GE aims to mold the student to becoming a holistic person, a more independent, creative, and critical thinker, a morally sound and intellectual individual of high integrity, and well able to adapt to the fast-changing pace of today's living. This program has continuously provided our students with a broad perspective that enables them to engage with issues within and outside their own field of specialization. Today's webinar, Understanding the Self, is a timely activity as we iteratively navigate our another academic year. It is important to know who we are, who our students are, and where our students are coming from, especially now that the country is confronted with a lot of challenges. And so with this, let me thank Professor Josephine Dionisio and Professor Rosanne Marie Echivare for being with us today. What you are about to share will be an important guide to understanding the self and others. Let me also thank the GEC Director, Professor Nancy Kimuel Gabriel, and the staff of the GE Center for helping organize today's webinar. And of course, I thank Professor Ruth Lusterio Rico for hosting this event today. And of course, thank you again to our colleagues from the SUCs and LUCs for participating in today's webinar. Muli, magandang umaga sa ating lahat at manatili po sana tayong ligtas.
Maraming salamat po, VC Tess, sa inyong warm welcome para sa ating mga participants. At this point, I would just like to give a special shout out to all our participants. Now there are more than 1,300 in our webinar, and also we have those watching in YouTube and in our Facebook page. So pleasant morning again to all. Magandang umaga po. I hope lahat po tayo ay nasa mabuting kalagayan. At lalong-lalo na po yung mga binisita ng Bagyong Maring nitong mga nakaraang araw. Nakita ko po kanina na meron tayong mga kasamahan dito sa webinar na mula sa Northern Luzon. Of course, nandito rin po ang ating mga kasamang educators mula sa iba't ibang academic institutions, higher education institutions from the National Capital Region, from Visayas and Mindanao. Sayang po at hindi natin nakikita ang isa't isa, pero I'm sure, dahil very active na po ang chat ngayon, I'm sure ay excited na kayo ngayong umaga para makipag-interact po sa ating mga speakers at gayon din po sa ating mga participants din through the chat. Without further ado, I would like to introduce now and welcome our first speaker. Our first speaker is an associate professor at the Department of Sociology, College of Social Science and Philosophy, and she is also the current chair of the department. This is also the institution where she earned her Bachelor of Arts and Master of Arts degrees in Sociology. She teaches undergraduate courses on social psychology, environment and society, social movements, and general education courses. Her teaching is enriched by her continuous engagement in collaborative interdisciplinary research. Her most recent research projects are on technology and social development, which seek to help build an inclusive model of rural industrialization and development. Associate Professor Jo Junicio was coordinator of the inter-CU team that developed the system-wide GE course on self and society. We call it SAS1. A system GE champion, she worked towards the institution of SAS1 at the system level, as well as in UP Diliman. She is also very actively involved in promoting and in teaching our GE courses at the College of Social Sciences and Philosophy. She likewise led an inter-CU team of module writers, which prepared the modules and curated the learning resources for SAS1. She was lead author for Module 2, Context and Process of Selfhood, and co-author for Module 1, Perspectives about the Self. Associate Professor Junicio has also developed a teaching material entitled Self and Society, Introducing Key Concepts, which is included in the UP Open University's TVUP lineup entitled Master Voices, Multimedia and Multidisciplinary Teaching and Learning Materials for GE Courses. This is an open educational resource. Before joining the academe, Associate Professor Jo Junicio worked in a development NGO where she has developed the passion and commitment to pursue social justice, which continues to be her main motivation in teaching and research. Let us all give a warm virtual welcome to our first speaker, Associate Professor Josephine C. Junicio. Ma'am Jo.
Maraming salamat po, Ma'am Ruth. Magandang umaga po sa kanilang lahat. Sana po ay naririnig niyo ako ng maayos at sana nga po ay nasa mabuting kalagayan ang bawat isa sa inyo. Let me just share my screen with you. Okay. Sana po ay nakikita nyo. No, so I have prepared quite a number of slides and I will be browsing through them very quickly so para magkasya po doon sa allotted time natin ngayon. Ang general outline po ng aking presentation sa umagang ito ay ganito. No? I will first briefly give a description of Generation Z as learners. Then I will give an overview of the CHED GE course. I will spend quite a bit of time on this so that I could go through the course content and in the process suggest specific activities. No? And then I will go through a very quick overview of the UP version of this GE course on Understanding the Self, entitled Self and Society 1 or SAS 1. Towards the end, I will also show you a few useful online tools so that you could make your classes more interactive. Marami po doon sa questions na ipinadala nyo ay may kinalaman din dito. Okay, so umpisahan na po natin, no? Very quickly lang, ano bang katangian ng ating Generation Z as learners, yung ating mga estudyante sa kasalukuyan? May rami na pong mga pag-aaral na ginawa sa ibang bansa hinggil dito. At ang isang characterization nga ng Generation Z ay tinatawag silang digital natives, no? Kaiba dun sa ibang henerasyon, ang mga estudyanteng ito ngayon ay nagsisikap na makita kung paano sila makakatulong sa pagbabago ng lipunan, mas open-minded sila, makipag-collaborate sa mga kapwa estudyante nila. Although gusto nila, meron din silang pag-aaral muna, no, doon sa mga bagay-bagay na ito bago sila makapag-participate. So, pero ang isang characteristic nga ng Generation Z ay yung pagiging digital natives nila. No? So as learners, ito yung nakikita dun sa literature. They prefer to engage on hands-on learning opportunities, no? Affinity for seeking information through video kasi syempre familiar na sila sa YouTube, sa TikTok, no? So sa maraming mga video materials, learning materials. So they learn better. Very interested sa mga video materials nito. They have engaged in research, no? Online kasi ginagamit na rin natin yan ngayon. So would rather engage daw in social change initiatives instead of simply volunteering, no? Ito kasing mga pag-aaral na ito, karamihan ito sa konteksto ng Western countries or Northern countries, ginawa nila mga case studies, no? So hindi naman natin masasabing lahat ito ay applicable dito sa atin, pero marami rin characteristics na binabanggit dito ng Generation Z as learners na maobserbahan natin sa ating mga estudyante sa kasalukuyan. Having that, bearing that in mind, no, punta tayo doon ngayon sa CHED GE course na Understanding the Self. No? Alam na nating lahat na itong CHED GE course na ito ay mayroong tatlong malaking bahagi. Yung various perspectives on the self, basically yung iba't ibang disiplina on the self, paano nila tinitignan. Tapos yung unpacking the self, yung iba-ibang dimensions ng sarili. At pangatlo, yung managing and caring for the self. Alam na rin natin na sa first part ng various perspectives, ang gusto talaga nating masapol dito ay yung iba't ibang conceptualizations at ng self para maipakita kung paano ito nakakatulong doon sa shaping ng mga sarili, no? At sa dulo ay magkaroon sila ng pagkakataong ma-analyze ang sarili nilang development as a self. Makikita natin yung theme na yon, no? Nandun lagi sa lahat ng parts. Doon sa Unpacking the Self, dimensions ng self and identity, pero sa dulo ay makikita rin natin para sa examination ng sarili ng ating mga estudyante. So kung ganun, in terms of activities, no, at pwede na rin bahagi ng ating assessment tools, dapat meron silang pagkakataon na nakakapag-sulat o nakakapag-reflect tungkol dun sa mga natutunan nila na kung paano ito i-apply sa kanilang mga sarili. Bukod pa dun sa mga talagang conceptual na mga bagay, no? Lastly, dun sa managing the self, no, yung theoretical underpinnings at pag ng iba't ibang aspeto ng sarili, pagkakaroon ng skills. Anong skills yon? Na basically yung management ng stress, planning, lifelong planning, at iba pa, no? So yan basically yung ano. So, kung papasok tayo dun sa iba't ibang bahagi ng perspectives o ng kurso, no? Una na yung various perspectives on the self, magmula sa iba't ibang disiplina. Alam na natin siguro yung una, no? Sa ancient Greek philosophy, no? Halimbawa si Socrates, famous for the quote, "The unexamined life is not worth living." Ang basic question niya is, how should we live? No, paano pa tayo dapat mabuhay? At yung sagot do sa katanungan yun, kailangan natin ng assessment ng ating sarili. We need to know ourselves. At in that process, we will find out that the true self, sabi niya Socrates, is that it is our soul. So we need to care for the soul to be virtuous and happy. Alam na natin na sa ancient Greek philosophy, pag nagsasabi sila ng soul, it is not the same soul that we refer to in most religious teachings. No? Yung soul ay mas bahagi ng intellect. No? At ano rin yan, same theme, pareho, sabi ko nga, sa ancient Greek philosophy, ang gusto nilang itanong, what makes us human? No? So doon unay sa pamamagitan na Plato, Aristotle, yung pagkahiwalay ng body and soul. No? At yung soul, because it is the seat of reason, it is the true and immortal soul. So what makes us human is that we possess soul and intellect. So yung pagtingin sa body as mas non-human, ano, kumbaga na bahagi. No, kaya nga halimbawa itong kurso na ito na Understanding the Self, makikita natin yung relasyon niya, di ba? Dito sa ganitong mauugat pa natin doon sa ganitong pagtingin, no, na we need to examine our life. So makikita natin na sa Dark Ages, yung ganong pagtingin na hiwalay yung soul at yung mind o yung intellect ay nagpapatuloy pa rin. It's just that sa Dark Ages, pinakita na natin na yung soul mas nagkaroon ng religious connotation at hindi na siya substantial in form. Yung intellect ang mas sinasabing substantial in form, and that is what makes us human. No, sa early modern philosophy, magmula kay René Descartes. So si René Descartes naman, so what is the self, no? So what is the self? The self is the mind. The self is consciousness, no? Kasi mayroong dualism ng body and mind. Noong sa mind, nandun ang self na sinasabi. Si John Locke, iba naman ang tingin niya, no? So doon sa what is the self? The self is, kasi we are born as tabula rasa, sabi nga ni John Locke, so there's nothing in the mind except what was first in the senses. So it is experience. No? The self is is based on our experiences and based on what we remember, what we recall. Kaya kapag pinagkumpara mo yung dalawa, so doon sa kay Descartes, what makes us the same person over time, it is the sameness of mind. No? Pero kay John Locke, it is the sameness of consciousness, and this consciousness is not the body, not only the mind, but also what is in our memory, what we remember based on our experiences. No? Maraming pwedeng gamitin example dito, maraming mga pelikula na nagawa na ganyan yung tema. Sa kabilang banda, pagdating kay David Hume, kumpara kay René Descartes, no? At sa mga naiba pang philosopher sa nauna sa kanya, sabing ganoon ay but the self is an illusion, no? So and that bakit tinitignan na mas priority yung mind or yung intellect when we also have passions, and in fact our intellect, our mind, our consciousness is a slave to passions. At it's not bad to recognize our emotions, our passion. We just need to learn to to control it in the sense na magiging siyang mas kapakipakinabang para sa buhay mo at sa buhay ng ibang tao. So para kay Kant, nag-agree din siya kay David Hume, no? Tungkol sa sa human nature as transcendental, pero sa kanya mas importante pa rin ang rationality, no? So doon sa pagkakahati ng humans between the homo numenon at saka yung homo phenomenon, binibigyang halaga niya yung homo numenon, no? Ibig sabihin yung God-like dimension ng ating mga sarili. Nadidiscover natin yung essence na yon ng pagiging tao natin sa pamamagitan ng mga experience na nakukuha natin. Pero it is still the mind, no, with its reason that has to be cultivated. Si Freud, sabi niya gano'n, okay, pero the human mind is meron niyang conscious and unconscious. So kaiba dun sa ibang mga nauna sa kanya, nag-focus naman siya, interested siya doon sa unconscious part of the human mind, no? Sabi niya ganoon, doon doon ang marami sa ating mga psychoanalytic functioning, psychological functioning, katulad ng desires, motivations, etc. So kung gusto mong maintindihan ng iyong sarili, kailangan halungkatin mo yon, yung part of the unconscious na yon. Alam natin na si Sigmund Freud yung mayroong idea ng paghahati ng self between id, ego, and superego. Okay? Si Merleau-Ponty, ang isang mahalagang contribution niya ay yung pag-focus o yung pagbibigay pansin doon sa physical body. Ibig sabihin, ang ating karanasan ay dumadaan sa senses, dumadaan sa physical body, no? At kung gayon, kailangang magkaroon ng pagpapahalaga dito. Kasi yung ating experiences, it changes our mind, no? Bilang bahagi ng daigdig, no? So importanteng bahagi ng ating sarili yung ating physical body, no? So
excuse me, Ma'am Jo, nakamute
yes.
po yata kayo.
Oh my God. Okay.
Ma'am, naririnig po namin siya.
Okay. Nakamute ba ako? Hindi, Okay.
Ibang device po kasi yung mic niya po. So, nakamute po dun sa video, pero meron po siyang sound.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, sige. So sa philosophy, nakita natin, maraming iba't ibang pagtanaw tungkol sa sarili, no? But at the end of it all, ang gusto nating sigurong ipunto dito is that yung sarili merong iba't iba ring dimension, no? At kailangang pahalagahan yung bawat dimension na yon. Kailangang pahalagahan mo yung iyong mind, intellect, kailangan pahalagahan ng iyong emotions, passions, kailangan pahalagahan ng iyong spirituality, kailangan pahalagahan ng iyong pangangatawan, no? Yung body, kasi lahat itong bagay na to ay bahagi ng iyong sarili. At ito yung mga temang makikita natin, sinusubaybayan doon sa kabuuan ng kurso na Understanding the Self. Pagdating naman sa mga iba't ibang social science discipline, ano naman ang naiambag, halimbawa ng sociology. Doon sa article halimbawa na nandun sa syllabus ng CHED na sinulat ni Jerry Lanuza, kasama ko sa Department of Sociology, Constitution of the Self, yung title niya, ang isa sigurong mahalagang contribution ng article na yon is the idea that the self as an individual is a product of modern society. Ibig sabihin, across time, across history, bawat yugto, bawat lipunan, meron naman siyang konsepto na merong self, di ba? Pero yung self bilang isang hiwalay na entity, individual entity, lumitaw lang yun sa isang specific point in history. Yun yung pag-usbong ng tinatawag na modern society kung saan laganap na yung mass production, no? Hindi ang karanasan ng tao sa produksyon at sa ekonomiya hindi matulad ng traditional society na mayroong pakikipagtulungan sa kapitbahay, etc. No? So, mas individualized. Pati yung kanilang mga pangangatawan at yung kultura nakatutok sa self as an individual. Okay. Dagdag pa ron, sabi rin sa sociology sa pamamagitan ni George Herbert Mead, no? Sabi, self has reflexivity and agency, no? Merong I and me where the me is the object of action while the I is the doer, no? So ano ang mahalaga dito sa sinasabi ni George Herbert Mead na to? Ang implication ng pag-iisip niya, no, tungkol dun sa the I as the doer ay yung konsepto ng reflexivity. Ano ba itong reflexivity? Sabi nga, continuous process of thinking and doing in the context of interacting with others. Reflexivity is the ability to see oneself as an object. Parang nakikita mo siya as a third person, yung sarili mo. Which is, sabi ni George Herbert Mead, a uniquely human capability and enables us to achieve a sense of self. No? And therefore, kung nakakapag-reflect ka, nakikita mo yung sarili mo from a third person's point of view, pwede mong pangunahan, no? Mayroon kang intentionality in terms of action. So kaya sabing gano'n, human beings have agency or the capability to cause necessary and desired changes, no? May application din tong konsepto ng reflexivity sa paggawa ng research sa social sciences. Kasi kailangan mong makita yung iyong ano yung mga biases mo. Karaniwang nakakalimutan natin na ang mga tao as human beings ay merong ganitong capability ng intelligent reflection. Karamihan ang ginagawa natin is out of routine, out of habit, no? So yun yung isang mahalagang. Si William James, ganun din, sa psychology, sabi niya, yung me, merong tatlong subcategories. No? May material self, may social self, at may spiritual self. Pero yun nga, yung lahat na yun, yung idea mo about yung me, which is part of the self, ay nakukuha mo sa pakikipag-interact sa ibang tao. So the self is is in the process of social interaction, but it is also a cognitive construction. Anong ibig sabihin ng cognitive construction? Sa pagninilay-nilay mo sa sarili mo, nabubuo mo yung sense of self mo. Yun yung isang mahalagang gustong banggitin ni William James, no? Sa psychology. At saka katulad sa sociology, may sa social psychology, meron ngang intersection ng idea na the self as proactive and having agency. Agency refers to the capacity to act independently and to make decisions. Siguro kung merong mga fellow sociologists dito, alam natin yung konsepto ng socialization, di ba? The socialization, ang idea is that through socialization, we learn the rules of society and therefore we behave, we think, we behave. Everything that we do is on the basis of how we learn, no, or what we learned are the rules of society. Mas parang mas for social control yung socialization. But doon sa ideas nga ni George Herbert Mead at kahit dito kay Bandura, no, makikita natin na yung it is also through socialization that we learn how to change things, how to cope, no? Ibig sabihin, kailangan din natin reconceptualize ang socialization as where agency emanates. No? Hindi lang tayo produkto ng lipunan, constituted by it, meron din tayong kapasidad na i-resist at baguhin yung ating context. Okay. Kaya ngayon napili ko dito kasi yung global na pag-aaral tungkol sa mga ganong klaseng behavior, no? Lalo na dito sa panahon ng pandemya. Yung maraming kaso ng emergent agency, no? Mga bagay na ginagawa independently, no? Kahit na walang nagsasabi o nag-uutos para tumugon sa krisis. Sa anthropology, ang isang mahalagang contribution nila yung concept ng person. So sa iba't ibang lipunan, sa iba't ibang yugto ng kasaysayan, maraming iba't ibang persons, no, na lumitaw. Yung person na yon ay entity or sa anthropology tingin niya yung person is not limited to being to human beings, no. Pwedeng yung isang kultura ay could imbue an object or an animal, no, a place, the qualities and characteristics of a person. So, ang mahalagang konsepto ay personhood. Paano ka nagpapakatao? Personhood is attained and maintained through relationships, not only with human beings, but with things, places, animals, etc. So through engagement ay nagiging ano na tayo, personhood. So yung konsepto ng pagpapakatao. Yung Western and Oriental Eastern thought naman, ang gusto natin lang doon i-point out is that kaiba sa, merong similarities yung Western at saka Oriental thought. Pero yung approach niya, mas magkaiba. Sa Western thinking kasi, napansin natin, gusto niya paghiwa-hiwalayin, di ba? Mind, body, no, mind, soul, etc. Pero sa Eastern or Oriental thought, ang mas focus niya ay yung pagkakabuo, yung holism nitong mga bagay nito, no? At although ang direction pa rin ay perfection, self-perfection, di ba? Mapapansin natin na dun sa Western philosophy may bahid ng perfection as godlike, di ba? Pero sa Eastern philosophy, merong yung perfection is perfecting a human being, no? Through daily existence, no? So sa pang-araw-araw na buhay, sa everyday life, to be perfect in everyday life, hindi lang perfect in dun sa mga extraordinary circumstances or through thinking or ano. Pero yun. So for the first part, yun very very quickly lang. Alam natin na isa pang mahalagang punto ay yung unpacking the self. So dun sa unpacking the self, okay. Gusto ko lang muna palang i-summarize, no, yung sa different philosophical perspectives. Ang takeaway natin siguro doon is that, yun na nga, simulat sa Paul, gustong makita yung pagkakaiba ng tao sa hayop. What makes us human? What is human nature? And in the process of answering those questions, laging binibigyang prioridad either the mind or the intellect. No, para bang yung pag-uusap mo sa katawan at saka sa emotions, laging hindi na yan saklaw ng pagiging tao kasi saklaw yun na yung meron ng hayop, di ba? Katawan, di ba? Or yung pagiging emotional is parang weakness, no? Pero sa dulo ng lahat ng discussion na to, ang learning, ang takeaway sana ng ating mga estudyante is that lahat ng bagay na yan ay bahagi ng pagiging tao. Mapaisip, katawan, emosyon, ang kailangan natin ay matutunan at maintindihan siya bilang bahagi ng isang buong pagkatao. Okay. So as sa unpacking the self, so, kaya pupunta tayo sa pangalawang bahagi ng kurso, physical self. So ang mga importante siguro diinan din dito, yung usapin ng body image, no? Na laganap ngayon sa mga mag-aaral, lalo na sa mga kabataan, lalo na, no? At yung impact ng culture do sa body image at self-esteem. Sa kalagayan na laganap ang social media, bullying, cyberbullying, no? Mahalagang matalakay sa klase. So sa adolescence is a critical period, no? So, kung magkakaroon ka ng negative self-image, dadalhin sa yugto na to, dadalhin mo na yan habang buhay. At karaniwang itong negative self-image ay likha ng body shaming at bullying, lalo na nga sa social media, no? Itong ginamit ko nga yung example kay Angel Locsin, nasa module pa ng DepEd, di ba? Na kapag mataba ka o payat ka, kung ano man ang porte ng katawan mo, mapalalaki, babae, merong body shaming. At sana ay matutunan ng mga estudyante natin na itigil yan. Diba? Ganun din sa sa kulay ng balat. Legacy naman nating colonial experience. Sabi nga ni Prats Panon, no? The most enduring and arguably more brutal form of white colonial power was its erasure of the identity of the colonized. So, lahat ng mga naging colony, ninanais niya na maging puti kasi yun yung kulay ng colonizer. And yet, kapag nagawa niya na lahat ng pwede niyang gawin para maging kamukha siya ng colonizer, ire-reject pa rin siya ng colonizer dahil secondary, ano lang siya, no? Second class citizen. So, deep-seated inferiority complex ang epekto nito. At kung gayon, dapat nga matutunan ng ating mga estudyante sa yugtong ito ng kurso na yung dimension ng physical self, yung pag-accept do sa ating sarili, no, na yung mga iniisip nating kahinaan o kapangitan ay likha rin ng kultura at ng kasaysayan, no, karanasan ng ating pagiging isang kolonya. Okay. The sexual self, no? Napaka-sensitive na paksa. Pero siguro ang mahalagang banggitin nga dito ay yung pag sinasabi mong may kaibahan din yung sex at gender. Kung ang sex ay tumutukoy dun sa mga physical na katangian mo, ang gender ay tumutukol dun sa mga assigned roles. So anong problema? Ang problema is that na nakukulong sa sex yung definition ng ating social roles. Kaya may tinitignan tayong pambabae o panlalaki, nawawala ng kalayaan, no, na nagkakaroon ng mga stereotypes at doon din nagiging batayan ng prejudice. So kailangan din nating makita na yun na nga, although mayroong pagkakaiba physically ang male and female, hindi dapat sila magkaroon ng limit sa kung ano yung assigned gender roles ng lipunan. At isa pa siguro yung paglilinaw na merong nanamayaning rape culture, ano, sa lipunan, kung saan dahil nga itinutumbas mo yung pagiging lalaki sa pagiging mas malakas, etc. At yung babae pagiging mahina. So, ito rin yung isa sa mga pinagsisimulan ng sexism, no? At yung rape culture nga, no? So, maraming mga practices, no? May microaggression, etc. hanggang sa actual na violence. No, siguro dapat maging conscious yung ating mga mag-aaral na itong mga microaggressions na to, karaniwang tinatanggap at pinagtatawanan nila ay bahagi ng pagpapanatili ng tinatawag na rape culture. No? Sabi nga dito, wag natin sabihan yung mga kababaihan na kung ano yung dapat nilang isuot para wag silang ma-rape. Ang turuan natin na yung ating mga kalalakihan na hindi sila dapat nang re-rape. Sapagkat ang rape ay paglabag sa karapatang pantao, lalo na karamihan ay mga kababaihan. So doon sa sexual self, palagay ko isang mahalagang pag-aaral ito. Isa pa, sabi nung sa CHED, kailangan mandatory na i-discuss yung population education. Siguro ang isang magandang focus dito ay pag-uusap tungkol sa reproductive health, no? Kung ano yung mga long-term benefits, halimbawa ng pag-espasyo ng panganganak, lalo na para sa mga kababaihan, no? Paano ba pinapangalagaan ang mga bagong silang na yung bakit kailangan pahalagahan, no, ang kalusugan, no, ng babae at lalaki, no? Pero at ano yung responsibilidad, pantay na responsibilidad ng babae at lalaki tungo doon sa pagpaplano ng pamilya. Karaniwan kasi sa babae, itong pinrepair ng DOH na to. Di ba parang babae lang ang merong responsibilidad at magbebenepisyo kapag pinangalagaan ng reproductive health o kapag pinlano ang pamilya. Pero sa totoo lang, dapat responsibilidad ng babae at lalaki yung pagpaplano ng pamilya, pagkakaroon ng consciousness tungkol sa contraceptives at pangangalaga sa kanilang reproductive health. As adolescents, kailangan din nating malaman na sa Pilipinas ay tumataas ang bilang ng teenage pregnancies, no? At karaniwan, sabi sa pag-aaral, ito ay bunsod, no, ng mababang edukasyon tungkol sa mga bagay na ito, sa sexual education, sex education. at saka yung panonood ng TV, impormasyon galing sa iba't ibang barkada, etc. Kung kaya't mahalaga na sa bahaging ito ay mapagdiinan ng pansin yung age nila, no, situation nila ng mga at maganda mabigyan ng pagkakataon sila makapag-reflect at makapagsulat, no, sa sarili nilang karanasan o kalagayan. The material and economic self. So siguro isang magandang idagdag lang dito is that yung material self, nakatukoy siya hindi doon sa actual na mga bagay, kundi yung psychological ownership, no? So, ibig sabihin sa isang consumerist society katulad ng meron tayo ngayon, nagiging bahagi na ng sarili natin yung mga gadgets, etc. Yung sa ngayon ang kultura yung add to cart sa Lazada, di ba? So, kailangan din sila magkaroon ng consciousness na ang material na mga bagay ay hindi naman siya lamang dapat panggagalingan ng ating fulfillment o dapat hindi rin tayo ma-impluwensyahan noong mga ng isang consumerist society, no? Okay. At sa spiritual, so isang dimension din ng pagkatao yung spiritual self. Not necessary religion or yung religious implication, pero yung sinasabi is that kahit meron tayong religion, kahit wala tayong religion, kahit ano pa yung religion natin, ang bawat isang tao ay merong tinatawag na spiritual self, nakapatungkol doon sa inner self, psychological self, na kailangan mong i-nurture. Kailangan mong pagpapahingahin, kailangan mong bigyan ng katahimikan, kailangan mong bigyan ng kilalanin at bigyan ng panahon. Pwedeng yung kung ikaw ay may relihiyon, pwedeng sa pamagitan ng dasal, simbahan, etc. Pero kung sa ibang tao, yung spirituality natatagpuan nila sa pakikipag-interact sa mga ibang tao, sa ibang hayop o sa kalikasan. O di kaya ay yung pagsasarili at pagre-reflect nga, no, through meditation, maraming iba't ibang bagay. No? So, yung pangkontra doon sa material self, excesses ng material self ay yung ating spiritual self. Sabi nga doon sa iba't ibang social science disciplines, meron tayong agency. So that's why yung isang dimension ng pagkatao ay yung political self, no? People can, and it has been proven that people can make causal contributions to the course of events, no? Maraming pwedeng example sa kasaysayan ng Pilipinas na lumahok sa iba't ibang klase ng pagkilos yung bilang bahagi ng citizenship. So citizenship is not only a label na chinechekan mo sa mga forms and citizenship mo. Citizenship is a verb, is something that we do, di ba? For ourselves and for our society. So yung wag kang makialam sa politika, di ba? Hindi totoo 'yon because the self it has a political dimension, no? Kasi meron nga siyang agency. Okay. So, at yung political self, pwede rin natin iugnay doon sa Filipino values, yung kapwa, na kumpara sa Western concept ng self, sa Filipino concept of self, ang self natin ay kapwa. Ibig sabihin, with me and my fellow men, no? So hindi tayo nag-iisa, no? And then coupled with loob, na yun yung kaya tayo merong depth of human relationship, no? Kahit pa sa yung kabutihang loob. So marami tayong iba't ibang konsepto ng loob. So taken together, sabing ganon, ito yung pwede nating gamitin gabay, no, sa ating social involvement, nakikipagkapwa at gumagawa batay sa kabutihang loob, kagandaang loob. No, sasabi nga dito, the Filipino concept of pagbabagong dangal. Ito yung positive dimension of Filipino cultural identity in responding to very many new challenges. Okay. Later on, siguro mas matatalakay ni Ma'am yung sa digital self, pero siguro gusto ko lang banggitin na yung sa sa digital self sa panahon ngayon ng ating mga Generation Z lalo na, engaged sila sa social media, no? Pero gusto lang ipaalala siguro na while the self acts with agency in the digital world, pwede nating mag-invento na kung ano-anong persona doon. Marami ding forces na uh, naglilimit doon sa exercise ng ganong agency. At karaniwan, yun nga, impression management, no? So, ang ating pakay. No? Kaya ito, favorite nila yan ngayon, si Baby Yoda, di ba? Sa mga memes. No? Kaya kailangang makita rin nila yung while we need to protect our privacy in cyberspace, itong anonymity na to minsan nagiging dahilan kung paano nagbibigay daan para tayo kumilos in destructive ways. So sa ating mga mag-aaral, magandang maging bahagi ng talakayan yan. Okay. So nakita natin na sa kabuuan yung iba't ibang dimension ng self na hindi kinakailangang maging hiwa-hiwalay na dimension. No? Ang pakay nun ay maintindihan mo yung sarili mo sa kabuuan na mayroong iba't ibang dimensions nito. Karaniwan mabuti ngang magagawa nila on their own, no? Yung ganong application na sa kanilang mga sarili. Pagsusulat halimbawa ng panibagong talambuhay, no? O pagsusuri sa isang spesipikong karanasan nila. Ngayon naman ang version ng UP ng kanyang Understanding the Self. So sa UP, meron kaming Self and Society 1. Itong Self and Society 1 na to ay pwede nating mahati sa 5 units, no? Yung perspectives about the self, process and context of selfhood. Tapos meron kaming paghihiwalay tungkol doon sa self in adolescence and young adulthood. So may iba't ibang modules sa ilalim nitong mga paksa na ito, at yun nga sa bawat paksa na ito ay meron na ihandang mga modules yung mga faculty ng UP Diliman. So aside from that, meron pang hiwalay na focus tungkol sa citizenship, no? At saka sa yung iba't ibang special topics sa bandang dulo. Ngayon, so ano nga ba? So, course description niya, katulad din doon sa understanding sa self, makita yung iba't ibang influences sa self, magkaroon ng, ito siguro mas explicit kaysa doon sa CHED, pero yung appreciation ng human agency in different context, no? So in terms of course goals, ganun din, no? Understanding the complex nature of selfhood, meron lang specific emphasis doon sa developmental stage ng ating learners. At saka pangalawa, explicit yung pag-promote ng civility regardless of differences. So ibig sabihin, yung pulso mo nagpapakita dapat nung differences, no? Hindi lang siya nakapokus doon sa self as an individual ng isang tao. Dapat makikita mo rin yung iba-ibang self in society. Okay, so yan, pareho rin naman. So sa course content, isa-isahin lang natin. No? Sasabi natin, different perspectives about the self. No? So ang ilang suggested activities dito, ito yung think, pair, share. So pwedeng mag-analyze sila ng movie clips, no? Lalo na yung mga tungkol sa twins, Lord of the Flies. No? Pwede nilang gawin na dalawang tao o isang small group, mag-a-analyze sila ng case na yon, makakapag-generate ng interaction sa mga magkakaklase. Pwede rin yung mga pelikula na nag-highlight ng Filipino identity. Siguro para mga pelikula na nag-highlight, ito kasi yung twin separated at birth, etc., Lord of the Flies, ano ba yung debates about the self? Is it nature or nurture? Is it biology or is it society? So magandang exercise, diba? Application ng mga ideas. Doon naman sa process of selfhood, ito kasi isang gustong idagdag ng course na Self and Society sa UP is that uh, yung selfhood ay gumagalaw through time and space, no? Yung nagbabago ang definition mo of the self, no? At yung definition mo of the self ay situated din, no? So yung geography mo, napansin niyo doon sa yun yung contribution ng anthropology doon sa pag-unawa ng sarili, di ba? Na yung sarili mo hindi hanggang doon lang sa katawan mo, di ba? Yung iyong environment, yung mga hayop, halaman, no? Yung kalupaan sa paligid mo, katubigan, bahagi din yun, mga raw materials din yun ng definition of self mo, nagiging bahagi siya ng memory and interaction. So yun yung gustong ipakita dito. Kaya, pwede nilang gumawa ng isang photo essay, pwede nilang gawin as individual o as our team, no, partners, o kaya pag-analyze sa iba't ibang marketing identities, no, paano ba pine-present ang sarili sa ads, sa commercials, so kahit sa Facebook, no, sa social media, paano mo kini-curate yung iyong sarili sa iba't ibang yugto ng panahon. So, dito naman sa self in adolescence and young adulthood, tatlo kasi yung ano niya, no? Una muna, yung self-concept, self-identity. So, yun yung nakafocus, ano bang meron sa puberty, body image, discussion sa gender and sexuality, etc. At yung iba't ibang examples ng rite of passage. Yung pangalawang topic under self in adolescence and young adulthood ay yung expression, self-expression, no? Attraction, intimacy, love, nako, interesting sa kanila yan. Paano, dyan din yung panahon na nabubuo yung values mo, principles and ideologies. At dyan din pinakamalaki yung challenge sa peer influences, at tukso sa risk-taking behavior. So yun yung isang gustong talakayin dyan sa paksa na yan, no? Lastly, sa paksa na yun, yung din ilang behavioral and health issues among adolescents and young adults. May kinalaman sa mental health, reproductive health, conflicts and stresses, no? So pwede nating gamitin itong mga paraan na ito, analysis ng media representation, pagpapagawa ng reflection paper, pagsusulat sa sarili, di ba? Visual analysis nga ng selfies. Okay, lastly, ito, hindi pa pala second to the last, citizenship. Pwede rin tayong magpagawa ng yan, mag-simulate ng cloud para sa mga ideas, pa-engage sila sa debate, magkaroon ng mga exposure activities, civic service activities. Okay. Subject, sa suggested topics, kasama na rin doon, yun nga, yung ilang mga pwedeng observation nila sa kanilang mga kapaligiran. No? Useful online tools lang, mabilis na to. Sa karanasan ko, sa pagtuturo sa klase ko, syempre ginagamit natin yung Zoom. Babanggitin ko lang para, kasi kahit na online, no, virtual, pwede pa rin tayong gumawa ng mga mas interactive na activities. Nabanggit kanina, itong format ng webinar, walang masyadong interaction Pero pagka sa klase natin, ang format niya meeting, di ba? So from time to time, maganda na kinukumusta natin yung mga estudyante kahit nakapatay yung kanilang mga camera. So, magre-request ka, pa-thumbs up naman, pa-react. So alam mo kung sino yung nandyan pa at nakikinig, no? Pwede mo rin gamitin yung feature ng Zoom na breakout rooms para hatiin sila sa iba't ibang grupo at para magkaroon sila ng mga small group discussion. Pwede rin mayroong Zoom polling, no, sa webinar at saka sa meeting para ma-check mo kung hanggang saan yung natututunan nila o di kaya ay nare-retain nila sa memory o di kaya ay yung feelings nila at the moment tungkol sa mga tinatalakay sa klase. Pag doon sa very useful tong breakout rooms ng Zoom kasi nga nagkakaroon sila ng small group activities. Usually, pina-partner ko siya sa Jamboard. Sa Jamboard, pagkatapos nilang mag-discuss, pwede silang mag-post nung mga sticky notes kung saan nandun yung mga ideas nila either as individual or as a group, no? Sa Jamboard, pwedeng nakikita ng iba't ibang grupo yung ginagawa ng ibang grupo, pwede rin namang hindi. At pwedeng makita na ng buong klase yung resulta ng workshop output, kumbaga, or discussion output ng iba't ibang mga grupo. Ang isa pang paraan para sa interaction, kahit na online, ay yung Slido. Sa UP, Slido yung ginagamit, pero pwede rin siguro ginagamit ng iba yung Mentimeter. No? So, dito sa Slido, pwede ka kasing gumawa ng magpagawa sa mga estudyante ng polls, no? At saka ng word cloud para lang ma-check mo kung nare-retain nila yung mga ideas na pinag-aralan, o di kaya naman ay para i-check kung ano yung diagnostic, no? Pwedeng diagnostic, ano ba yung ideas nila before and after a discussion. Pwede rin siyang simulated quiz na anonymous, no? Para walang pressure. So, yun, ewan ko kung meron kayong ngayon, laptop or cellphone, pwede nyo kasing i-scan ito, no? O di kaya pumunta dun sa website ng slido.com, tapos i-type nyo itong 130944. Tapos, sagutin nyo itong tanong na to in 1 or 2 words. What is your most important learning from this presentation? No? Practice lang yan. Kaya lang baka wala na akong time. No? So, pero doon nyo po kailangan i-type para po mapili nyo yung yung session na to. #130944. And then pag nandun na kayo sa session na yon, at saka nyo ita-type yan, no? Engagement students, awareness, and compassion. So ilan po yun sa mga natututunan, no, ng ating mga participants sa ngayon, no? Ang isang malaking natutunan nila ay itong number ng ating site na slide. No? Pero flexibility and compassion, okay. Opo. So, ayan po, makikita nyo. So, kung nasa klase kayo, pwedeng before and after a discussion, igagawin nyo to, no? Para ma-check lang yung temperatura ng ating mga estudyante, kung ano na yung natutunan nila, ano yung naiisip nila, ano yung gusto nilang i-share. So, maraming salamat po sa mga nag-share at patuloy na nag-share doon sa Slido. Yung Slido pwede nyo i-integrate sa PowerPoint. So, pagka sinyer screen nyo yung PowerPoint nyo sa Zoom, ayan na nga po, makikita na siya. Okay. Okay po, kasi baka wala na tayong time, kaya puputulin ko na po dito. Pero pwede nyo pa pong ipagpatuloy yung pag-input doon sa Slido hanggang mamaya. Okay? So, sorry. Sandali lang po. Ano lang naman, goodbye lang. So, ayun na po. Maraming salamat po sa pakikinig. Sana po ay may natutunan kayo kahit kaunti sa aking mga binahagi ngayong umaga.
Maraming salamat po, Ma'am Jo. Maraming salamat, Bitin, dahil ang daming mga talagang very useful na shinare sa ating lahat. Si Prof. Jo Dionisio, marami pong tanong na nailagay sa ating Q&A at sa chat box. Pero mamaya po sa Q&A portion po ng ating webinar, i-address ang mga tanong na yon. Sasabihin ko lang po na hang on at mamaya ay babalikan po natin, makakasama pa po natin ulit si Ma'am Jo sa ating Q&A portion. Now we have to move on to our second speaker. I'd like to introduce her first. Our second speaker is a registered psychometrician, psychologist, and a professional teacher. She teaches at the UP Diliman Extension Program in Pampanga and Olongapo, handling courses in applied psychology. Assistant Professor Rosan Marie Echivare has been involved also in several programs on mental health, community psychology, and psychosocial support. So without further ado, let us give a warm virtual welcome to Professor Rosan Marie Echivare. Ma'am Rosan?
Yes po, good morning. Let me just share my screen muna. Maayong buntag sa tanan. Kita ko maraming taga South, maging North at Central Philippines, no? So, natutuwa po ako na ako'y naanyayahan na magbahagi ng mga nasi-share ko rin sa students. You know, I tell my students na we are both learning in the classroom, no? Hindi lang ako ang nagtuturo, kundi sila rin dahil naibabahagi nila ang kanilang mga karanasan sa akin at ako'y natututo rin sa kanila. So, mag-share na po ako ng screen. Ayan. Okay. So, good morning po muli. Ako ay inatasan sa umagang ito na magbahagi ng mga isinishare ko rin sa klase tungkol sa mental health at maging sa digital world. Makikita po natin dito na ang mental health na ngayon sa mga panahong ito ay halos parang nakakabit rin sa ginagagalawang digital world. So, kagaya ng sinabi ni Dr. Junicio kanina, at ito ay bahagi ng pagkakakilala sa sarili at ang kanilang pag-ikot o paggalaw sa lipunan. So, binigyan tayo ni Dr. Junicio kanina ng ilang mga learning outcomes ng Self and Society 1. So, ito po ang konteksto ng pag-uusapan ay ng mental health at ng digital world. So, bukod po sa learning outcomes, kailangan natin kilalanin sa again sa pag-usap ng mental health and digital world kung sino po ang ating mga audience. At ang audience po natin ay mga kabataan. Of course, they are younger than we are, no? So we have to understand where they come from, ano po ang pinanggalingan nilang pamilya, anong pinanggalingan nilang ethnicity, or ang kanilang paaralan bago sila tumungo ng kolehiyo, at iba pang mga konteksto nila ng halimbawa ng kanilang developmental stage, yung mga ganyan. So, kilalanin natin sila. At another context is our institution. For whatever institution we are coming from or we are teaching from, we should know what the mandate of our institutions are, what culture does our institution have. Ayun. So, ito po ay iba't iba dahil tayo ay nanggagaling sa iba't ibang institusyon at kailangan nating i-instill sa bawat isang ating mga estudyante kung ano po talaga ang nais iparating or nais i-mold sa ating mga estudyante ng ating mga institusyon. At gaya rin po yung nabanggit kanina, kailangan isaalang-alang or we also need to give importance to where we are today. Kasi it was different when SAS1 or when Self and Society was being taught before the pandemic. But now that we are in the midst of the pandemic and we are not really certain where we are going, maybe by the end of the year or by next year, we should also take in mind or bear in mind where we are coming from, where we are in, which is the pandemic. So, maraming impact po ang pandemya sa atin, ano po. At iba-iba rin po ang impact nito sa iba't ibang lugar kung nasaan po tayo. So, dito po meron pong ILO report kung papaano po na apektuhan ng COVID ang ating ekonomiya. Meron din po tayong darating na halalan sa susunod na taon, sa 2022. So ito po ay isa ring konteksto na we should bear in mind. But it's not really essential to talk about it talk about it extensively in class, ano? Pero as we talk to the students, we have to also look into the probable scenarios that are going to happen because we are facing a 2022 election. Ayun po. So context is really important as we talk about mental health and the digital world. So let me go to um, what I do, some of the things that I do in class with regard to talking about mental health. So I begin the class with a personal temperature check. Mahalaga pong mag magkumustahan sa mga estudyante. Lalo na, 'di ba, napansin po ba natin na students are feel differently each week. That's what I observed with them, no. Each week parang iba yung cloud na lumalabas sa ang ginagamit ko is Mentimeter. So uh, the bigger the font, the more students answer that, no. The more we know that students are here in this cloud are tired, are stressed, are anxious. Yon. Pero meron din mga ilang-ilang positive, 'di ba? Merong happy, merong good, merong calm. So as we go through the lesson of that hour of that day, we bear in mind these feelings that the students are bringing to class, in class during that session. Another way is also by the Jamboard or by, again, Mentimeter or Slido. Um, you pose a question, what is stressing us out? And you can gauge by the students' answer how they feel during that time. So let's go to the definitions of mental health. Giving two definitions which are very, very similar. First is a definition that was given by that was uh, given by the WHO, the World Health Organization, which states that mental health is a state of well-being in which an individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. Compare that with what the mental health law says about mental health. So, ang mental health law ng Pilipinas Republic Act number 11036, nakasaad na ang mental health refers to a state of well-being in which the individual realizes one's own abilities and potentials, copes adequately with normal stresses of life, displays resilience in the face of extreme life events, works productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a positive contribution to the community. Marahil, nakita natin dito ay base rin sa World Health Organization ang naging definition ng mental health sa ating mental health law. So, pag in-overlap mo ang mga definitions na ito, ang mental health ay state of well-being, hindi siya state of illness. Kasi nga po, 'di ba, health. So it's more on the positive side of how we see ourselves, how we think about ourselves. So it refers to mental state of well-being in which the individual realizes abilities. Ano ang kakayanan ng estudyante? Anong kakayanan ng bawat individual? Paano niya na na how can he cope, diba? Adequately. So the coping is adequate with the normal stresses of life. dito tinitingnan ang stress na normal. Wala namang life na, wala namang buhay na walang stress, di ba? Kaya meron tayong tinatawag na normal stresses of life. So dito, nakapapakita ng individual ang kanyang resilience or ang kanyang capability to overcome those stresses in order for him or her to work productively and fruitfully so that he or she can make a positive contribution to the community. On the other hand, diba, when we say mental health, people almost always equate that with some kind of disorder. Sa ating mental health law, according to the mental health condition refers to a neurologic or psychiatric condition characterized by the existence of a recognizable, clinically significant disturbance in an individual's cognition, emotional regulation, or behavior that reflects a genetic or acquired dysfunction in the neurobiological, psychosocial, or developmental processes underlying mental functioning. The determination of whether a mental health condition exists shall be based on the best available scientific and medical evidence. So ito po yung definition of mental health condition. So while mental health promotes well-being, there may be people who, shall we say, suffer a mental health condition. Sa ating pagtuturo po ng me and my mental health, most of us are not clinicians. Even I am not a clinician. Ang field ko po sa psikolohiya ay social psychology. It's not clinical psychology. So we have to be a bit cautious about talking about mental health conditions on a very clinical or technical basis. Kasi ang mental health, when we talk about mental health to our students, there may be triggers, di ba? Yung sa ating pag-discuss, maging maingat po tayo sa mga trigger. What's a trigger? It refers to something that affects your emotional state, often often significantly by causing extreme overwhelm or distress. A trigger affects your ability to remain present in the moment. It may bring up specific thought patterns or influence your behavior. So, pag sinabi po natin halimbawa, rape, hindi po natin alam na meron pong trauma or meron pong karanasan ang ilang miyembro o isang miyembro ng ating klase at ito ay makakapag-trigger sa kanya sa alaala na hindi maganda. So very ano po to, no, very I think it's a very slippery walk if we talk about mental health in a very, very clinical sense. So, kung maaari, iwasan po natin or maging maingat po tayo sa ganitong usapin sa ating klase. So, what I do is to want to know where the students are, di ba? So, ang isa sa mga paraan ay gumamit ng mental health literacy survey, questionnaire, ganyan. So ito, marami pong formats yun. One format is the Vignette Format. Isang halimbawa ng item sa Vignette Format ay ito. Basahin ko lang po. So the following vignette different situations that you might encounter at work or at class at school. You are asked to rate knowledge about how to identify and address each situation. Ito yung situation. Over the past weeks, Dante has appeared sad and withdrawn and becomes tearful very easily. He appears tired all the time and his productivity has declined. Dante admits that he finds it difficult to concentrate. He confides in you that he has lost his sense of enjoyment in things and sometimes feels that life isn't worth living. So the student is to rate his or her level of knowledge. What might be happening to him? Would you know if you would really, if the student was really sure or really certain about what's happening, he would rate it a 5, very high, or very low if he has no idea at all. And then the other questions are how you could prevent the situation from becoming worse, what you should say or do in the situation, resources or services that might be helpful. Okay. Another format of the mental health literacy is the scale format. So dito, uh, items are presented and then um, the student either one strongly agrees, two five strongly disagree, one and five strongly agree. So ilan lang basahin ko ang ilan mga items. 21, a mental health illness is a sign of personal weakness. Okay. Um, strongly agree or strongly disagree. 24, it is best to avoid people with a mental health illness so that you don't develop this problem. Number 27, if I had a mental illness, I would not seek help from a mental health professional. So here, most of the items here in this portion of the scale refer to the attitude of the participant or of the respondent to what mental health is. Okay. Ilan sa mga pag-aaral na sa mental health literacy ay nagpapakita kung ano ang kaalaman ng mga ating mga estudyante. Ito ay isang pag-aaral um, ng mga first year college students which found out that 55% of 797 college students was able to recognize a depression in a given vignette using the correct label. So, alam nila na ang description ay patungkol sa depression. 95.7% of students expressed intention to seek help from different sources, such as mataas talaga yung family, and then friends, and then parang humahabol lang yung counselor or professional. Okay? Depression was attributed to what professionals would commonly describe as triggers such as day-to-day problems, childhood problems, guilt over wrongful acts or trauma, etc. Okay? Sige. So, meron ding nakita ang pag-aaral na preference over non-prescribed products such as tea, organic medicine, vitamins, rather than prescribed medications such as antidepressants and antipsychotics. So yung antidepressants and antipsychotics are just can just be availed by a prescription. So kailangan nakapag-konsulta ang individual sa isang psychiatrist before availing of antidepressant antipsychotic drugs. Counseling was nominated as most helpful for a depressed individual. And lastly, avoiding stress was viewed as an effective prevention strategy, which is contrary to what professionals recommend. Okay? Sige. So, sa huli ng pag-uusap sa klase ng patungkol sa mental health, maigi sa aking palagay na magbigay ng mga where to refer a friend or yourself if you need the help to whatever services are available in your area. You have to know what services are available in your location, in your geographic location. And of course, when we avail of online services, these are available nationwide. Okay, so marami pong lists, and I'm sure your institutions have have uh, counseling counseling departments which can give the local list of services. Ayun po. And for the activity, I give a subjective happiness scale, which is on the other side of mental health condition. No? So if if the students, I think this is a um, material that's not too triggering, quote unquote. Yun. So the happiness scale is just like talagang 4 items lang po talaga siya. So I consider myself not a very happy person or a very happy person. And then compared to most of my peers, I consider myself happy, less happy, more happy, and the other 2 items. So they go to, I bring them to breakout rooms, and then I visit their breakout rooms while they are discussing their answers to these 4 items. And then I put also reflection points. You can also put your reflection points based on the profile of your students. But these are some general reflection points. Were there any concepts on mental health that I learned about just now? And how would I describe the status of my present mental well-being? So parang in dinadivert lang yung katagang mental health as ginagawang mental well-being, so that the student somehow reflects on their strengths rather than their weakness. Ayun po. Sige. Let's go to the self in a digital world, which we already heard an overview about a while ago with Dr. Janisha. Sige, ito po yung na-present na rin po niya. So, kailangan nating kailangan nating intindihin kung saan po tayo bilang mga guro, kung saan po tayo dito. Ako, aminado po ako na nandun po ako sa boomers sa boomer side. Kaya kailangan ko talagang umeffort para intindihin yung kabilang dako, no, yung kabilang side ng Gen Z side. Okay? Ayan. So, as mentioned earlier, the digital natives are born to swipe, di ba? Hindi na sila yung kanilang fine motor skills. Hindi na masyadong nagagamit dahil I mean, they just swipe, they just click, yung ganon. Hindi po ito derogatory for the digital natives. It's just that that's their world, no? They express themselves with their own style. So the memes that they post, diba? Yung mga the questions that they post, very witty questions, witty statements. They tend to travel more. So may mga travel goals. That's why we see that talking about the digital world and talking about mental health has very heavy connections, no? Because we were stunted in traveling in this pandemic. So these digital natives have concerns about not being able to go around as much during the pandemic. Of course, they want 24-hour access. Mas mabilis yung connection, mas okay sa kanila. And of course, they are also masters. They are the masters of social media. So again, to just take a quick profile of who our students are. Of course, we know they are digital natives, but diba? These are things that we notice about them. How many social media networks do they use? if you say 0 to 1, nakalagay dito, you're a digital caveman. If it's 2 to 3, you're kind of digital. But if it's more than 3, you're a digital native. So if I ask you in the chat, how many of you can you give us 5 social media apps na talagang 5 talaga na I know, 'di ba Friendster, yak, 'di ba? Sobrang sobrang makaluma na 'yon. So we're not I'm not really, I just use Facebook, which they say Facebook is for us, 'di ba? For us digital cavemen. Because they use Twitter and the other yeah. So TikTok, I've never, 'di ba? Although TikTok is something that's being abused kinda nowadays. Ayun. Thank you for those who are in the chat, no. Ang dami niyang alam. I guess you're in between the millennial generation and the Gen Z generation. Habol kaming mga boomer generation. Ayan. Sige. Sige, for the other yun. So what ayan. Sige, I'd appreciate you also participating in the chat. What do you most likely do for relaxation? Ayan. Go for a run outdoors. Very, very, very physical, no? That goes for the digital cavemen, no? And then, do you play your videos? Do you just play a video game dito, mga PS, mga ganyan? Or do you have a Netflix? Do you have a Netflix marathon? So you click, and then you go over the Netflix menu, and then you see what trending Netflix films to watch, no? So may nakita ko sa chat, I sleep for relaxation. And that's what I would want to do also. Okay. So dito, no, nakikita talaga natin yung kaibahan ng iba't ibang henerasyon. At meron din ako nakita kaninang katanungan kung papaano natin i-reach out ang Gen Z na hindi nagmumukhang trying hard. May nakita akong ganong questions Q&A box kanina. Hindi naman kailangan natin mag-trying hard, di ba? Kailangan lang natin maintindihan sila, di ba? It's like it's actually a question of generation gap, as the term was used in the 80s. No, siguro mamaya sa Q&A portion we can expand that response. Sige. Punta muna tayo sa teorya. Goffman in 1959 wrote the presentation of self in everyday life. It focuses on the importance of everyday face-to-face interactions between people. According to Goffman, a personal interaction is based on performance and a relationship between the actor and the audience, wherein there is an agreed upon definition of the situation. So, dito nakita natin ang emphasis ng performance at ng relationship. Ano ang pinapakita at ano ang relasyon ng actor sa audience or ng nagpo-post sa Facebook at nagbabasa ng post, diba? Kung ilalagay natin sa digital world. Goffman proposes that when an individual interacts with others, they are attempting to guide and create a certain image in which the other person sees them and attains knowledge about them. This guiding is an attempt to highlight positive ideas of self and desired impressions. So, mas pinaiigting na ipalabas na okay, diba? Positive ideas, maganda, diba? Sometimes, yung kaya nga na parang nauso yung mga filter, diba? if you want to mask who you really are, you may use the filters. But pansinin natin, even in 1959, Goffman was already able to um, describe our natural tendency to highlight positive things about ourselves and to downplay um, things that are negative. Although later on mapapansin natin, 'di ba, mas maraming usapin ngayon sa social media ng mga Gen Z, yung kanilang masasabi natin mga triggers at mga it's okay not to be okay, things like that in social media. Sige. So sa mga pag-aaral, eto maganda kasi pong aralin sila. Na intindihin sila kasi maging ako, sinisikap ko po talagang maintindihan sila. I really try to understand them because sometimes I get impatient, 'di ba? Being on the on the caveman side of digital in the digital world. I really want to try and um, make a very, very special effort to understand Gen Z. Okay, dito sa pag-aaral, young people, social media, and impacts on well-being. Sinabi dito, although social media has many potential threats to well-being, they become magnified by typically older generations who do not see social media's potential to positively develop all areas in life. Ayun. The harm with using social media comes from a lack of education and coping mechanisms on combating these threats because these harmful effects are only starting to surface recently. Yon. Social media can be positive, but the study says that it's also harmful because um, there's a lack of education with regards to how to cope with the bombardment of bashing, with the bombardment of comments, either positive or negative, in the social media. So here um, we see that young people do not have the capacity to manage social media's impacts on their own, although they are the largest population that uses these platforms. So um, um, dito tayo bilang mga guro papasok, di ba? How will we enable them to manage social media's impact? Ayun. So it is the role of adults to acknowledge that social media is deeply ingrained in current society. Um, yung worldwide survey of how digital we are, di ba? In sometime in the early 2000s, we were tagged. Philippines was tagged as the country with most text messages being used. Yon. So nakikita na natin na tayo talaga ay social media um, consumers, no? Ayun. So role natin bilang mga adults or older than our students to acknowledge that social media is there. We have to live with it, and they must learn to help. We must learn to help young people navigate digital citizenship to prevent potential harm. So dito potential pa lang. So aagapan, 'di ba? Proactive. Rather than chastising social media, yung lalaitin yung social media, yan. Kaya ka ganyan kasi puro ka Facebook, ganyan. Yun. Society needs to learn how to leverage its strengths because it is not going away anytime soon. Social media will just be there, and maybe will just progress to higher technology, no, in terms of social media apps and platforms. Many companies have realized this and have taken advantage of this opportunity, which has potential for consumer exploitation. So here, this is where it's harmful, diba? There's an exploitation side of social media. how a young person uses social media and interprets the information presented is what impacts their experience, and it's not the usage itself. So I want to repeat that. How a young person uses social media and interprets information presented is what impacts their experience. It's not the usage of social media, because social media is a means of communication and that's neutral. But how the young person interprets and how it impacts their experience is what we should be um, cautious or careful about. Ayan. Yeah. So other studies, the Pew Research Center shows that when they post the question, will social relations get better? Uh, and then there was a very high, both for the expert responses and for the sample, it was very high turnout for yes, diba? It's a positive force. In 2022, when I look at the bigger picture and consider my personal friendships, marriage, and other relationships, I see the internet has mostly been a positive force in my social world, and this will only grow more true in the future. So everybody agrees with that statement. So in another study, which studied self-efficacy in terms of social media, um, uh, there's a study which explored the concept of self-efficacy in the context of fake news. Fake news is a very um, rampant, no, these days. Um, this is a study by Hope entitled "Fake News, Self-Efficacy, Fake News Identification, and Content Sharing on Facebook." So here, the study showed the results indicated that those scoring high on a measure of Facebook-based fake news self-efficacy, that is, self-confidence in one's ability to identify factually incorrect current events information on Facebook. So if you are able to identify fake news from real fact, you have high self-efficacy. These persons performed increasingly well on fake news identification and classification tasks. The ability to identify and properly classify fake news was shown to be negatively related to the self-reported likelihood of sharing fake news on Facebook. Okay. So, kailangan natin bilang mga mas matanda at mas ika nga ay may wisdom kaysa sa ating mga mag-aaral, kailangan natin silang gabayan, bigyan ng mga guidelines, ano? Dahil sa mga researchers na to. Some 82% of middle schoolers could not distinguish between an ad labeled sponsored content and real news story on a website, according to Stanford University study of 7,804 students from middle schools through college. Hindi nila alam, no? And then people are bad at spotting fake news. And also here, we can see that an analysis of 4.5 million tweets shows falsehood are likely 70% more likely to get shared. Okay? Ayan. So with this, kailangan natin na, as I said, gabayan sila. Gabayan sila. Or pag-usapang mabuti. Alalahanin na rin natin nga po ang konteksto natin sa pandemya at ang konteksto rin natin sa halalan 2022. Marami pong mga infographics na maaari natin i-share at i-discuss sa loob ng klase patungkol po kung paano natin malalaman or how to spot fake news. So here are just some it's an infographic with some tips and guidelines on how to spot fake news. It's very important today. Ayun. Of course, we have reflection points and guides toward the end, or a take home or an assignment, or can be also um, breakout rooms. Have you ever been trapped by fake news? How did that come about? Or and then what limits have you set for yourself regarding social media? Social media use. Yeah. Thank you so much for those who are sharing their experiences as teachers in the chat. No, I cannot read everything, but I appreciate that you reflect also on who you are in terms of your social media know-how, and then where our students are in terms of ano yung ginagalawan nila. Sa ayon natin sa gusto, iba talaga po ang ginagalawan nila um, as digital native. So dun po, iyan lang po ang ilan sa aking mga maibabahagi ngayon. Ngayong oras na ito, muli, we just have to look at our context, where we are from what situation in our society are we discussing these things, because we have to be relevant, di po ba? We have to be relevant, and we have to have like we have to be kilometers away or miles ahead of our students, so that we know how to impart knowledge, and how to impart also being cautious about things around them. So maraming salamat po, at magandang umaga po sa lahat.
Thank you so much, Ma'am Roseanne. Okay, I'm sure that our participants have been enlightened by the very rich talk that you gave about mental health, how we can help our students cope with the situation right now. Okay, alam ko po na siguro ay inaabangan nyo na yung Q&A portion natin para ngayon at makasama ang ating dalawang speakers. But in the meantime, kailangan po natin mag-break, no? Mag-health break. I would like to invite all participants to do the brief exercise demonstrated in the video. So this is going to be a 5-minute break. So see you after 5 minutes po.
Simpleng ehersisyo sa palaupong pamumuhay o sedentary lifestyle. Sabi nga nila, sitting is the new smoking, at ang pag-upo ng matagal ay nakakasama sa kalusugan. Sundin ang mga sumusunod. Ehersisyo sa leeg at balikat. Ehersisyo sa kamay. Ehersisyo sa likod at legs. Ugaliing gawin itong mga ehersisyo kada isang oras ng pagkakaupo. Ehersisyo sa leeg at balikat. Ehersisyo sa kamay. Ehersisyo sa likod at legs. Isang paalala mula sa OSHC.
Okay, we're back. So I would like to invite our two speakers. Okay na po ba? Na-relax na tayo sa brief health break natin? I'd like to invite back to the screen Ma'am Jo, Ma'am Rosan, and also I think we will be joined by Chris. Okay, sa ating pong portion ngayon, ito po ay ang ating Q&A part at napakarami pong mga tanong. We tried our best to put everything, summarize everything and collate everything. So yung mga hindi na po namin literally babasahin yung mga tanong, kung hindi pinagrupo-grupo po namin yung mga tanong ng ating participants dahil I'm sure you will all agree with me na napaka-enriching po talaga ng ating mga ibinahagi ng ating mga speakers ngayong umaga, hindi lang para sa mga nagtuturo ng kurso na Understanding the Self. So yung dun po sa mga tanong na natanggap natin, so I'll begin with the first one probably, no? Many questions revolved around the challenges in remote teaching. So one of the concerns of many teachers these days, of course, is maintaining standards versus being understanding and compassionate of the situation of our students. So ano po kaya ang mga thoughts ng ating mga speakers tungkol sa bagay na ito, sa katanungan na ito? So I'm sure our participants are waiting for mga tips po on how we can address this particular dilemma.
Ma'am Ruth, siguro mauna na ako.
Sige po, Ma'am Jo.
Opo. Sa karanasan po namin dito sa UP, yun po yung isang una na inililinaw, no, sa faculty, sa estudyante at sa mga magulang ng mga estudyante na kahit po remote yung mode natin ng learning delivery, hindi nangangahulugan na nagiging lax na tayo in terms of maintaining high quality o high standards sa education. Kung paano pa rin po yung level ng standards na meron tayo dati, sikapin nating ma-meet pa rin yun. Ang challenge nga lang sa mga teachers ay kailangan niya talagang paghandaan ang klase niya way before the start of the semester or the academic year. Sa amin po sa UP, required kaming mag-submit ng course packs kung saan nandun na talaga yung mga guide questions at mga exercises, instructions sa students para sa mga isasubmit na output, learning resources, both reading and audiovisual na materials. So, yun lang po yung kasi yung challenge talaga sa mga teachers sa ngayon na kailangan talaga ng mas masinsin at mas mahaba-habang panahon ng paghahanda. Meron din po akong napansin na tanong kanina tungkol sa access naman. No, totoo naman na marami ring estudyante na wala naman ding access sa online resources. So paano naman sila? So again, sa karanasan po namin sa UP, kaya nga po pinaghahandaan ng mas maaga yung aming mga course packs kasi kailangan ding merong itong hard copy na version o di kaya yung digitized version pero nasa mga USB drives. At ang mga ito ay ipapadala sa mga estudyante na humihiling nito, no, lalo na po yun nga yung mga walang access sa internet. Kung kaya doon sa paghahanda rin namin ng aming mga course packs o syllabus, talagang meron ding pagbibigay ng leeway, no, kung ikaw ay magsasubmit ng kung ikaw ay walang access sa internet, therefore yung iyong kailangang mga requirements na ibibigay ay hindi nangangailangan ng masyadong intensive na sa online resources. At ganun din po, lenient din na sa attendance, no? Kaya yung lahat ng lectures katulad nito, lahat ng mga synchronous sessions ay dapat laging recorded at easily accessible para doon sa mga estudyante na hindi nakaka-attend ng synchronous sessions. Ayun po.
Ma'am Rosan. Thank you, Ma'am Jo.
Idagdag ko lang po na yung at least sa amin dito sa UP, hindi po hindi po required na nandun lahat sa synchronization dahil naunawaan po namin na merong mga ibang mahina ang connection. Kung kaya yun nga po yung hindi natin nire-reprimand na hindi tayo kumukuha ng attendance. Ano po. I don't know sa ibang institution, I think they require attendance during synchronous sessions. Siguro mas makakaibsan po ng stress sa mag-aaral na hindi siya required po na nandun sa synchronous. Kaya meron po tayong mga recorded. Yun po.
Okay. Related din po sa teaching ang susunod na tanong. Hindi po na-specify naman ng ating mga participants kung sino dapat yung sumagot. So kung okay lang po sa ating dalawang speakers na mag-add kung to contribute dun sa pagsagot ng katanungan. The second question po has to do with the generation gap between the baby boomers or maybe Gen X, kami ni Ma'am Jo. And Gen Z. How can we bridge the generation gap? How can baby boomers handle and facilitate learning for the Gen Z? Baka si Ma'am Rosan muna ngayon naman ang pwedeng magsimula.
Opo, kasi aminado po ako na nasa boomer po ako. Sometimes I would admit na impatient po ako kasi iba po yung kinalakihan kong education, how education should be brought about. But as I said kanina, talagang sinisikap ko pong maunawaan sila. Ang nagiging practice ko po ay ang aking mga pamangkin. Wala po akong mga anak, pero yung aking mga pamangkin, parang ginagawa ko po silang study group na kung paano ma-reach out because they are in the age of our students also. So it's more of not really reading about what I can do, but I ask people, I even ask my students, I want to learn from you. Please teach me how to do this, yung mga ganun. Maging honest lang po. Yun po.
Ma'am Jo?
Yun din po siguro, maganda po yung sinabi ni Ma'am Rosa, dadagdag ko lang. So, challenge din talaga sa ating mga guro na to always keep an open mind, no? At saka to have a sense of humor, no? So sa keeping an open mind, yun nga po yung sinabi ni Ma'am Rosan na marami tayong matututunan sa ating mga estudyante. So yung ina-expect natin sa kanila na intensive listening to us, maganda rin practice natin yung intensive listening to them. Pakinggan natin kanilang mga ideas, mga hinanaing. Pwede hindi nila nasasabi, so kailangan nag-o-observe ka. Ako din, ino-observe ko din yung anak ko na Gen Z, no? Kaya yung presentation ko kanina, maraming memes. Kasi effective pala sa kanila yung mga memes, no? At the same time, yun yung sense of humor, no? Kasi yun yung isang, sa kahit na anong sitwasyon, I find that very useful para makapag-bridge ng relationship. Tawanan lang natin yung ating sitwasyon na ating mga sarili.
Yeah, thank you for that po. Okay. So at this point, siguro dahil maraming tanong about understanding the Gen Z learners, no, ipapaalam ko lang po sa ating mga participants na ang GE Center ay nagsagawa po ng webinar sometime back, no, entitled The ABCs of Gen XYZ. Ito pong video ng webinar na ito ay available sa YouTube channel ng General Education Center ng UP Diliman. So for those interested po, pwede nyo pong ma-access ang video na yon, and I'm sure makakatulong po sa inyo ito. Naka-attend ako niya nung face-to-face pa, yung seminar na yan. Okay. So ang susunod naman po na tanong ay revolve around yung idea naman. This was already touched earlier in the talk of Ma'am Rosan. But there's a question, what are the best alternative ways or outlets that we can advise students to help them cope with their struggles and challenges or issues affecting them right now? Yun po, ma'am.
Okay.
Siguro si Ma'am Rosan being siya ang ating psychologist.
Yun nga po, no, lakihan po natin ang ating mga tenga para pakinggan sila. Bagamat hindi natin hawak lahat ng answers para sa kanilang mga issues, magandang ipakita po sa ating mga estudyante na tayo po ay willing makinig. Hindi natin kailangan magbigay ng solusyon kasi hindi naman po natin masusolusyonan yan eh. Pero yung mapakinggan sila at ma-affirm na totoo yung nararamdaman mo, ating pag-isipan, ating pag-tulungan kung paano natin siya masosolve or paano natin siya maiibsan o ma-decrease. And then, of course, we have to be parang equipped with a list of people or of services that they can avail of because it might, we are not really equipped to give any professional advice to them. Yun po.
Okay. So a related question probably to what was discussed earlier, no, yung sa challenges ng situation natin ngayon in teaching is a very practical one para sa mga teachers. Ano at paano naman daw po ang pinakamainam na gawin ng isang non-techie teacher sa kanyang pagtuturo sa Gen Z learners? So related dun sa adjustment, gano'n, sa ating situation ngayon. Ano po ang advice? Ma'am Jo.
Kailangan lang po siguro nga ng konting humility. Kasi ako din eh. Nakailang ulit ako doon sa klase ko ng palya nung slide. Pero, at saka ng Jamboard. Pero to my surprise and I am very grateful, yung pa pong mga estudyante ko ang nagtuturo sa akin na kung ano yung gagawin para mas masinop yung yung transition. So natututunan ko rin po sa kanila. Tsaka yun, practice lang po. Ang lagi kong ginagamit na example sa sarili ko, yung nanay ko na 70 plus years old na, no? And nagsusumika pa rin siya maging techie sa sa kanyang kasi yun ang isang paraan para makapag-connecta siya sa outside world.
Ma'am Rosan, meron po kayo idadagdag?
Opo, marami pong YouTube tutorial. Minsan yun po yung takbuhan ko. Kung hindi ko po masyadong gamay yung app. At nakakatulong po talaga yung mga tutorials. At may practice din kagaya ng sinabi ni Dr. Jo. Ayun po.
Ako din nag-YouTube. Kasi ginagaya ko lang kung ano yung ginagawa doon.
Ganyan daw ang learning mode ng Gen Z. Gusto nilang makita how it is being done. Mas madali silang matuto sa ganun. Kaya video tutorial din.
Okay, so far we are learning na talagang itong situation na ito is challenging on both ends, no? On our part as teachers and on the part of the students. Meron pong isang tanong dito, how and when should a teacher draw the line between helping out and interfering with the Gen Z learner's life?
Kasi Ma'am Rosan.
Oo.
Drawing the line.
Ano po kaya yung konteksto ng interfering? Because parang ang tingin nga in the online mode, sometimes students view classes as an interference. Parang ganun. Na imbes na at sometimes lang po of course with the mental health conditions and the internet connections ganyan. So diba it takes effort to nurture a helping mode. because you are the expert in the classroom, supposedly. We are the experts in the classroom. But we should not be experts in mind. Sabi nga dun sa presentation ni Doc Jo. Ano, di ba? Kailangan buong-buo, holistic, ano po tayo pag nasa classroom tayo. Sometimes it's very difficult because we are in the teacher mode. But we are also in the helping mode, in a helping service as teachers, di ba? To just expand knowledge, expand the self, yung mga ganon. So hindi siya hindi siya madali. Pero na-nurture siya within the teacher. Ayun po.
Any thoughts, Ma'am Jo, on that?
Draw the line. Meron po kailangang self-knowledge sa atin. So magre-reflect lang din tayo kung ano ba yung ating kapasidad, kakayanan, kalakasan, at ano rin yung ating mga limitasyon. Hindi po ba? Kasi kung ang general rule ko, halimbawa, at yun din yung sinasabi lagi sa amin sa aming universidad sa UP, always be kind. No? Always be compassionate. Malaking tulong na po yun. Have a listening ear. No? Yung pag may nag-email sa'yo or nag-chat sa'yo ng estudyante, kailangan agad ng feedback. Sagutin agad kung may tanong kahit na nakakairita na paulit-ulit yung tanong. Malaking tulong po sa kanila yun na meron palang nakikinig at nasasagot ng kanilang mga tanong. Ngayon, syempre tayo, pagod din tayo, may sarili din tayong mga burden, yung ating mental health, kailangan din nating pangalagaan. So, nag-agree po ako kay Mang Rosan, hindi na sinasabi sa amin lagi, ituro natin sila sa mga espesyalista at mga eksperto na mas makakatulong sa kanila. Sa atin bilang guro, kailangan nating makinig at makipag-interact sa kanila. Pero kung paano mare-resolve yung kanilang mga personal na problema, sa pamilya man yan o saan man, mas makakabuti sigurong mas marami silang nakakausap tungkol doon.
Okay. Ang isa pa pong tanong dito sa mga collated questions is, I'll read the question. It's actually related to an earlier question that was posed. So one of my biggest dilemmas as a college teacher is that no matter how much I try to simplify the concepts in the lessons, students have great difficulty understanding them. Especially in the first 5 lessons, siguro dun sa understanding the self na na subject. The one who posed the question believes that it is the root cause of which is lack of comprehension skills. So the participant is asking if you have any tips or suggestions. So parang bumalik doon sa question, yung first question kanina on maintaining the standards. Parang hindi daw siya maintindihan ng mga estudyante niya kahit kahit na gaano ang effort niya.
Ako po, kasi lalo na pag GE, GE kasi kailangan broad knowledge, di ba? At the same time. Pero hindi naman po ako espesyalista, hindi naman ako eksperto sa lahat ng disiplina. Pero sinisikap kong pag-aralan yung mga main points at yung paraan ko kung ano yung madali sa akin para mas maintindihan siya, sinisikap kong yun yung i-translate sa mga estudyante. At isa pang paraan ng pagsisimplify, many concepts are, di ba, lalo na doon sa philosophy, highly abstract and pero sabi nga lalo na sa Gen Z learners, kailangan may application agad diba? Anong example niyan sa tunay na buhay, anong example niyan sa sarili nila. So isang paraan po 'yun para makapag-simplify ng mga konsepto. Pwede rin naman pong hindi tayo yung nagpo-provide, sila yung mag-provide ng example. Tanungin natin sila, ano ba sa tingin niyo, paano ba ito mai-apply sa pang-araw-araw na buhay o sa personal na buhay niyo. So, yun po isang paraan. Yun nga, paggamit din ng mga larawan, mga video, maraming pelikula po. Kahit nga yung The Matrix, hindi po ba, napaka-abstrakto ng konsepto na tinatalakay nung pero pelikula yon at maraming kabataan ang nakapanood nun. Very relatable. Maraming mga anime, manga, yung mga pinapanood nila. Maraming highly philosophical na mga bagay na tinatalakay po doon. Makakatulong po sa atin.
Ma'am Rosan?
Idagdag ko lang, no, agree po ako na na yung applications is really essential, at least towards the end of the class, kasi doon mo makikita kung gets nila yung konsepto o yung teorya. Pero lagi ko pong ine-emphasize sa class, these are theories, these are proposed explanations of what the self is. But we are not here to convince you that these theories are true, but for you to analyze ano ba yung magagamit mo upang makilala mo mas mabuti ang iyong sarili. And then ask them to paraphrase, di ba? Kung yung sa paraphrase nila ay nandun naman yung konsepto, although hindi naman exactly what the theory states, and then you get a picture of how much they understand yung pinag-uusapan sa klase.
Po, thank you. Yon nga po ang isa rin sa mga tips, no, na pwede nating maibigay doon po sa nag-raise ng tanong na yon. I think sa chat box ay marami ding nagbahagi ng kanilang mga sagot doon sa tanong na yon, how can we make our students better appreciate the concepts that we are teaching them in the class. The next question I think is very interesting, no, na touch din kanina sa talk ni Ma'am Rosan. How will we boost the political ideas and critical thinking of students given that fake news and historical revisionism is prevalent, especially in the cyberspace?
Maybe si Doc Jo on a sociological point of view.
Ay, yung sa amin po kasi paulit-ulit na pagpapaalala, no, na hindi naman po lahat ng nababasa natin sa internet ba yan, naririnig natin sa TV, o nababasa natin kung may nagbabasa pa sa mga dyaryo, no, o kahit mga libro, no. Hindi po lahat yan ay dapat na ipapaalala natin sa mga estudyante natin na hindi lahat yan ay dapat ina-absorb at tinatanggap na lamang na tama. Sa umpisa pa lang ng semestre, lagi ko sinasabi sa mga estudyante ko na kahit yung mga sinasabi ko bilang guro, yung mga tinuturo ko, dapat matutunan yung i-doubt, matutunan yung i-question. Kasi sa ganung paraan, kayo mapapractice, mahahasa na hindi lang basta tanggap ng tanggap, no? Hindi lang dapat passive recipient of knowledge. Sabi nga ni kailangan tayo ay laging active, no? Na nakikipag-usap, no? Nagbabasa ka ng material, ng libro, no? Sikat at kinikilalang tao. Sabi ko, ang challenge nung basahin mo siya at hanapin mo kung tama ba o mali, o convincing ba, persuasive ba yung kanyang sinasabi sa sitwasyon mo sa lahat ng pagkakataon. Huwag matakot mag-question. Parang sa pagpili ng politiko hindi ba? Hindi porke mayaman, hindi porke sikat o celebrity, hindi porke galing sa isang pamilyang kilala, no? Dapat tinitignan natin yung sinasabi kumpara sa ginagawa. Yung ginawa kumpara sa pangangailangan. So maraming paraan para ka makipag-interact at makipag-usap, makipag-debate sa mga ideya, whether they are written, heard, or ano. So dapat sa lahat ng pakikipag-engage nila, buhay lahat ng faculties nila bilang tao.
Sorry po, pinasa ko po sa inyo, Doc Jo, because di ba yung pong kasing fake news, napaka societal po ng pinanggagalingan yan. It's a very social mode of convincing, persuading, yung mga ganon. Kasi on a psychological point of view, it's just the self Diba? You'll just determine what am I supposed to know. Yung sa sarili mo kasi it's an individual decision. If you want to use critical thinking on things that you read in social media, then that's your call. But if you want to put blinders and say, basta ako, kay ano lang ako, tapos, di ba? And that's an individual call also. But we most likely would convince or would encourage our students to practice critical thinking.
Opo, agree. At saka sa mga GE courses po natin, I think yan ang dahilan kung bakit nandyan ang mga GE courses para po bawat kurso ay mag-contribute para sa pag-develop ng critical thinking sa ating mga estudyante. From the chat, I would just like to read the comment of Dr. Nancy Kimuel Gabriel. It is important to introduce the concept of historical revisionism, disinformation, misinformation, nearness to truth based on credible and reliable sources, primary source most especially. So we should, I think yung point dyan is that we should help our students, no, being really our role is to guide them. Of course, we respect kung they're also their own opinions, their own assessments, no? But we are here to help them. Another interesting question po, ito naman ay favorite ko. Yes, Ma'am Jo.
Pala, Ma'am Ruth, kasi yung dating chair ng Department of Sociology, si Sir Mano, meron siyang status update sa Facebook. Isa yun sa sinasabi niya na usually itong generation kasi na ito, di ba, sanay na sanay sila sa instant information, instant analysis, instant lahat. So nakakalikha yun ng yung katamaran, no? So, ang isang dapat na sasabihin din natin sa mga estudyante natin ay huwag silang maging tamad sa pag-iisip at pagsusuri dahil kinabukasan at kapakanan nila at ng marami yung nakasalalay. Kaya dapat talaga ay suriin sino nagsasalita, ano ang source, no? Ano ang batay against facts, no? Fact checking ang kampanya ng UP pagdating ng election halimbawa. So, pwede natin i-apply din bilang learning sa mga estudyante. Always check the sources and the facts. Huwag maging tamad sa pagsusuri.
Okay, thank you for that very important point, Ma'am Jo. Ito naman po as our next question, ang gusto ko sanang sabihin nga ay favorite ko ito kasi this is what I struggle in remote teaching tungkol sa assessment. So, ang tanong po ay, can you recommend the best way to assess if we fulfill the course learning outcomes? Ano kaya ang best assessment tools na pwedeng ibigay sa mga estudyante given the problems posed by distant learning while at the same time hindi magiging boring or sobrang fed up sila sa requirements? So assessment sa remote learning. Yun ang kanyang hinihingi. Any recommendation, best way to assess?
Unang-una po, yung sa context lang ng remote, ang isang natutunan namin sa context ng remote learning is that sa mga synchronous session, wag na tayong nagbibigay ng mga assessment doon na graded. No, pwede nating gamitin yung mga synchronous session, meron pa ring mga pa-quiz, pa-checking ng learning, etc. Pero hindi siya dapat graded. Para nang sa ganun, unang-una, walang pressure doon sa mga ma-attend. Tapos doon sa mga walang internet access na hindi maka-attend, hindi sila mapapag-iwanan. Tapos, ang isang tagubilin din sa amin is the lesser requirements, the better. Kaya nga, mas sisikap sana natin na halimbawa per module or per big topic, no? Pwede namang iba't iba 'yon, no? Kombinasyon nga kasi dapat bigyan ng pagkakataon sila makapag-reflect. So paano sila makakapag-reflect? Pwedeng nagsusulat na hindi masyadong mahaba, katulad lang siguro ng isang status update sa Facebook. Pwedeng nagdo-drawing, pwedeng kumakanta, lumilikha ng tula. O di kaya ay gumagawa ng short video, no? Sanay na sila diyan na gumagawa ng video. Ganun pa man, meron din mga requirements na kailangang knowledge-based, no? So, ayun po, yung ating mga traditional na pamamaraan siguro ng delivered in more create, halimbawa crossword puzzle. Kasi doon sa learning management system namin sa UGLE, pwede kang gumawa ng ganong klaseng quiz na sa forma ng crossword, etc. na mas interesting para sa mga estudyante.
Ma'am Roseanne?
Parang hindi masyadong, parang feeling ng mga estudyante, ang bigat-bigat ng test ng exam. Pag sinabi mong, tapos natanong nila, ma'am, anong klase pong exam? Yung gusto pa nilang malaman kung multiple choice o gano'n. Pag sinabi mong exam, parang yun na yung nakaka-trigger sa kanila.
Ng ano nila?
Ng anxiety. Opo. So, we have to, in the orientation, sa first day pa lang, dapat ipaintindihin natin kung ano po yung end goal na hindi to pass the exam. Hindi po kasi yun ang end goal ng siguro ng kahit anong subject. There to understand at your own, di ba? At your own perspective, what do you understand? So yun po siguro yung aking hinahanap sa estudyante na hindi eksakto. Of course, if this is math, this is a different different story. Pero this is understanding the self. So ang output ko dyan is collage or just tell them, just to show me what their takeaways are from the subject. Not so much objective quizzes or pero more of explanation. Yun nga sabi ni Ma'am Jo kanina, yung application.
Actually po, share ko lang, kahapon naka-attend ako ng webinar din on online actually quality assurance in remote teaching and learning. And yung isang takeaway ko doon is yung assessment should not focus on knowledge but on the higher thinking skills of the student. So ayun, siguro pagka ganun yung naging focus natin, mas maiisip natin kung anong klaseng activities ba yon, and not necessarily graded all the time, no? So para po siguro on both ends po yung benefit niyan, I think, hindi lang sa mga estudyante, pati din sa teacher, no? So ang next question po naman natin, well, related din sa assessment, how do we manage ways, and how do we manage ways to check academic dishonesty in this current learning modality? I think ang konteksto po nito ay kasi maraming nababalitaan ngayon na sa remote learning, madaming intellectual dishonesty. Ano po ang thoughts ninyo dito? How can we siguro avoid or encourage students not to commit it?
Ang isa po, pwede ipakita natin yung pros and cons ng dishonesty or ng honesty and dishonesty. Di po ba? Hindi lang doon sa pananakot ng magiging kaparusahan, kundi mismo bilang tao, bakit ba mahalaga maging honest sa lahat ng aspeto ng pamumuhay, lalo na kung sa klase. Tapos anong ibig sabihin din ng intellectual dishonesty? Kasi minsan, hindi nila alam na nagko-commit na pala sila ng intellectual dishonesty. So mahalaga rin malaman nila ano-ano yung mga instances na tinuturing natin na intellectual dishonesty. Para sa mga paper submissions, may mga applications na available para ma-check mo ang plagiarism. Hindi ko lang po alam kung available sa maraming participants natin ngayon, pero meron din pong mga ganon, no? Kaya nga halimbawa sa mga requirements, maganda rin yung ma-require silang gumawa ng something original halimbawa project, no? Yun nga, kanta po, mga so parang lalong maiiwasan, no, yung makapag-engage ka na intellectual dishonesty kasi manggagaling sa sarili mong creative yan po siguro.
Any additional thoughts, Ma'am Roseanne?
Yun nga po yung sinabi kong konteksto ng ating mga institusyon kung saan po tayo nabibilang ano po. I'm sure you have sa chat nakita ko yung honor code, yung values ng UP, halimbawa honor and excellence. Parang di ba sa blue book natin meron doon honor, excellence nakalagay. Pero pag sa online mode, hindi na po tayo nag-blue book. So, hindi na nila nakikita yon. Pero parang kailangan natin silang igiit whenever we have a requirement that to just remind them that there should be honor, excellence, and of course that's being explained already by the other G courses. Opo.
Another practical question naman po, nanghihingi po ang ilan sa ating mga participants ng recommendations on the best instructional materials for the course, Understanding the Self, and where to find them. Kanina po nakita ko din sa chat na kung meron daw masasuggest saan ba available ang mga modules. Actually, there are a lot sa internet di ba? Yung mga open educational resources. Yun nga lang, baka hindi specific to the course.
Marami pong Understanding the Self sa YouTube. Either lecture ng teacher o di kaya submission ng estudyante. Pag nag-Google ka rin po, maraming mga repository ang nangongolekta. So, ng mga PowerPoint slides, etc. So, I consider siguro marami dito ay anong tawag dito, nasa kumbaga open source, no? Or probably would give us some idea kung how to create our own, no? Pero yung mismo pong Understanding the Self na marami po siyang ganung audiovisual visual resources online. Kung teksto po, yung puro kasing sa Self and Society ng UP, merong mga modules, no, yung lahat ng topics. Pero yung sa Understanding the Self, hindi ko po sure kung meron na talaga siyang textbook. Ang alam ko kasi merong textbook sina Jerry Lanusa at Sara Raimundo, Culture and Society.
Understanding Culture.
Understanding Culture and Society. So, hindi exacto dun sa Understanding the Self.
So sa mga, ano po Ma'am Rosan, any tips on where to find the learning resources? I think yun yung challenge kasi sa karamihan, dahil nga naka-remote, lahat isosource mo online.
Mag-ingat lang po, mag-ingat agad, mag-ingat lang po sa mga kanluranin. Kasi iba po yung, marami po tayong Western resources na makikita sa internet. Kaya lang, iba po yung tingin ng self ng mga Westerners kesa sa ating pag ikinantextualize natin sa ating pagiging Pilipino. So, hindi natin dapat i-copy-paste yung mga sinasabi ng mga Western. Kasi yung mga Canada, yung mga open textbook, marami po sila. Even the self, if you Google Self and Society, meron pong mga textbook na lalabas mo. Pero mostly mga Western. So that's one caveat or one warning that we do not copy paste everything.
Pero nagulat
nawala
talaga
si
ako.
Chris. Yes, Ma'am. Ma'am Jo.
Nagulat talaga ako. Marami pala sa ating mga kapwa guro, no? Kasi marami na nagtuturo ng Understanding the Self. So they have their own YouTube channel. O di kaya they upload their PowerPoint slides sa so marami sa ating mga Filipino teachers, no, na nagtuturo na Understanding the Self are sharing their material. Pero yun na nga, dahil mismo sa nature nung course di ba, na largely Western, kailangan din ng konting sensitivity consciousness na ma-inject talaga yung Filipino flavor.
Chris, do we have any more questions? Yung question kasi tungkol sa copyright, I think has already been addressed, no? In the discussion of our speakers. So Okay, basahin ko lang din po yung isa dito na pinadalang tanong. How can we make our Understanding the Self course more inclusive? Like where and when to include topics on SOGI, special abilities, ethnicities. So yun po.
Doon po sa, lalo na po doon sa part 2 nung Understanding the Self, yung different dimensions of the self. Lalo na, halimbawa sa sexual self, di pwede po pa pumasok doon ang SOGI. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to cover it in my presentation because for lack of time. Pero yun, maganda din po nga discussion yun doon. No, ganun din po yung discussion halimbawa ng disiplina ng anthropology. No? So, marami pong pwedeng pagpasukan yung mga ganung specific topics do sa understanding the self. Yun nga lang po yung presentation kanina, shortcut yun just to give the so pero 58 58 hours po ba yun? Di ba? So marami pong oras na pwedeng ang kailangan natin punuan para sa discussion.
Mm-hmm. Yung po
sa self, ay sorry ma'am.
Sige po.
Sasabihin ko lang sa Self and Society kasi ng UP, merong specific na topics para doon.
Mm-hmm.
Sa culture, ethnicity, tsaka yung dun sa SOGI issues, no? Sa sexuality. Meron po.
Mm-hmm.
Ang wala yata kami, family planning.
Sa reproductive health yan, di po ba? Ayun. Yung sa konteksto naman namin, dahil nasa Clark kami, nung hindi pa face-to-face, nakakasalamuha talaga namin ng mga AITA. So, kahit sa yung mga estudyante, pag pumunta sila halimbawa sa Pure Gold, which katabi lang ng school sa Clark, nakakasalamuha nila yung mga AITA. So, meron kaming mga activities kung saan namin sila pinapadala or pakikipanayam sa mga katutubo. Ayun. Pumupunta talaga kami sa mga villages kasi malapit lang naman sa amin para makasalimuha sila. So parang meron siyang experiential activity. Yung mga ganyan.
Mm-hmm. Thank you po for that. Ito related questions, isa-summarize ko na lang, no? Yung dun sa topic ng the sexual self siguro ito, no, na touch kanina sa talk ni Ma'am Jo. Given the intergenerational gap between the students and their parents, how can we as teachers address this topic of Okay, sorry po, medyo nire-revise ko kasi ang question. The best way, what is the best way to teach sexual self to the students? The topic of sexual self.
Hindi ko po sure kung ano yung best kasi yung best makikita lang natin sa experience kung ano yung nagiging effective. But maybe the useful way of handling it is kasi halimbawa doon sa first part nga po ng course ng Understanding the Self, di ba po ang isang summary natin doon is that contrary to yung legacy of Western philosophy na magkahiwala yung isip at yung katawan, no, na para bang yung katawan ay dapat ay mas related sa mga hayop, hindi makatao, dapat pandirihan, hindi pwedeng pag-usapan, ganun din ang emosyon. Pero after that whole topic, no po, dapat meron na understanding yung mga estudyante na itong mga bagay na ito ay hindi tabu. In fact, bahagi siya ng sarili at dapat ina-acknowledge at pinag-uusapan. So, na-set na kaagad yung tone na pagdating mo doon sa pag-uusap mo ng sexual self, pinag-uusapan mo to dahil ito'y yung katawan mo, yung erogenous zone mo, ay bahagi ng iyong pagkatao. At kailangan mo pag-aralan at matutunan na magamit o pakinabangan sa tamang paraan. Hindi po ba? So, kahit po magkaibang generation, kung ganun po ang tono ng pag-uusap, baka naman makakatulong na hindi masyadong mahirapan both yung teacher at saka yung estudyante. Kasi sa totoo lang po, yung mga estudyante, nag-uusap-usap naman yan na sila-sila. no? At ang isang mahirap nga sa kanila, hindi nila nakakausap sa ganyang mga bagay yung kanilang mga magulang ay mga nakakatanda sa kanila. So sa context ng classroom, baka mas makakatulong na ito'y na-address sa paraang hindi naman intellectual and at the same time practical. Ayun po. Siguro yung maidadagdag ko to.
How about si Ma'am Rosan? May dadagdag po ba kayo on handling this specific question on um, discussing the sexual self as a
Oo.
topic in the course?
Yung ating kultura, hindi yung mga magulang kasi natin hindi sila open sa ganyan. So pagdating sa classroom, at least for my generation, no. So pagdating sa classroom, hindi ko ma-i-impose na yung yung pagiging masyadong conservative, because if you ask me, I'm really on the conservative side. Kasi as teachers, we should also evaluate where we stand when we talk about the sexual self. Kasi I reflected on my being very conservative about this before inilahad ko yan sa estudyante. So maybe before we endeavor to talk about this in a very objective, educational, professional way, we should also evaluate where we are coming from. Kasi I know of other teachers who are on the other side, who's too liberal. So sometimes they impose their liberal thoughts, and me naman, I impose my very conservative thoughts. So parang we should strike a balance where we are, so that we can impart the sexual self module appropriately.
Mm-mm. Tsaka yun nga, no, I think yung main point is the context, no, of our discussion of the topic. Maybe we can accommodate the last two questions before we end the Q&A session. Maybe this question is too specific, addressed to Ma'am Rosan. Is there such a thing as anxiety problem? If so, where do I refer my student for consultation? Ito po yung context na binigay ng ating participant. Two of my students were triggered. One confided to me. I referred her to our guidance center. The other mentioned something about her mother who passed away last year, but wouldn't say more. And she respects that. So that's the context of the question. Is there such thing as anxiety problem daw po?
There's a anxiety disorder, no? Anxiety panic disorder. So this is more of looking at things that might bring back trauma, bring back memories that are very sad or very stressful, that napipigilan na yung tao na gumawa na ng routine na mga bagay sa buhay niya. So these are very it depends on how much anxiety or the level of anxiety of the individual. Ma-gauge naman natin kung ito ay normal anxiety or this is already a ongoing progressive kind of anxiety. And as we mentioned earlier, we have to have a list already, no? Have to a ready list of where to go to, especially in our specific geographical locations. Kasi if we refer them to, like here in UP, we have psych serve. Puno na po yata yung psych serve ng UP. Ang dami nang nakapila doon. So in your institutions or in your local government units, or even in the private practices around you, you have to have a ready list where you have to refer the student.
Ayan. For our...
Dadagdag ko lang po.
Yes, Ma'am Jo.
So yun po yung kumbaga approach of choice. So po yung sinabi ni Ma'am Rosan, talaga refer sa mga expert and at the same time, siguro po bilang teachers, reminder lang po sa atin na wag po siguro tayong madaling masyado mag-label,
Mm-mm.
no? Wag po natin agad i-label yung estudyante na meron siyang anxiety problem o di kaya ay siya ay na-trigger, no? Kasi very technical itong mga terms na ito eh, no? Pwede
Mm.
kasing sa pamamagitan ng ating mga klase, sa mga sinasubmit nila sa atin, mga estudyante nag-open up. Eh, useful po yun eh, kahit sa feminist research methods, useful yun eh. Kasi yung mapagsulat mo sila, mapagsalita mo sila tungkol sa kanilang ginagawa, na nauobliga silang ipaliwanag yung nangyayari, suriin yung nangyayari sa kanilang sarili. Kaya, at kahit sa psychotherapy, useful din po yun eh. It's a form of talk therapy. So, yun, hindi naman ibig sabihin agad na meron silang sakit na o meron na trigger sa kanila, no. At the same time, yun nga, sabi ko, baka naman nalulungkot lang, oh. Eh, di at least may outlet, di po ba?
Mm-mm.
So, ano lang po yung sa akin, parang paalala lang po. Alam na natin lahat yun, pero paalala lang po. Minsan we are very quick to judge. Then naman.
May
For
dagdag
our
lang
final,
po.
yes po ma'am.
Yung kasi one of the prevalent scenarios nowadays is grief. Kasi dahil sa ating COVID, so meron tayong grief na parang meron tayong mood of grief sa ating mga pamilya, sa ating mga komunidad, ganyan. Siguro bilang mga guro, magbasa or magkaroon tayo ng konting kaalaman kung paano po i-approach yung grief kasi which very, very simple parang approach to grief kasi kasi hindi naman lahat ng ano ng issues ng estudyante ay nauugat sa academic kasi meron po silang pinanggagalingan parang grief mood sa paligid nila. So maybe we can read about it a little.
Okay, at this point po, I will invite our speakers to give their maybe last message, no? Focusing probably around any last message on how our participants can navigate through this situation of online or remote teaching and learning on the part of our students. So I'm sure that this webinar really went beyond just discussing the contents of understanding the self. So yung mga last words po, Ma'am Jo.
Ako po maraming salamat sa mga dumalo ngayong umaga. Sa totoo lang, ang dami ko rin pong natutunan dun sa inyong mga inilalagay sa chat box at saka dun sa inyong mga isinumiting katanungan. Malaking maitutulong nito sa akin bilang guro sa pagtuturo ko nung iba't ibang subjects na itinuturo ko, lalo na dun sa Self and Society 1. Patience, sense of humor, preparation, yun po siguro yung ilang mga susi, no, para sa matagumpay na pag-handle natin yung kursong katulad ng Understanding the Self. Ngayon, to address lang po yung isang question kanina na pinlag din ni Doc Nak na kailan ba psychologist yung nagtuturo ng Understanding the Self. Nakita naman po natin, yung Understanding the Self is a GE course. And by its very nature of being a GE course, hindi po kumbaga hindi sapat na meron ka lang specialization sa isang disiplina para epektibong maituro yung isang GE course. Dapat meron kang broad knowledge, sufficient experience. Pero ideal kasi yon. So, ang position po namin dyan is that pwedeng namang mga bagong guro na merong sapat na GE orientation, GE interest, na masipag na makakapagsaliksik do sa broad knowledge na ito, na effectively makakapagturo pa rin ng kursong Understanding the Self. Hindi nga lang po ako sigurado sa mga specificong requirements ng CHED o ng kanilang mga universidad. Pero sa amin po sa UP, ganun po ang isang practice. Salamat po.
Thank you, Ma'am Jo. Ma'am Rosan.
Maraming salamat rin po na ako ay nakapagbahagi ng ng kaunti. Of course, we wouldn't say, I myself wouldn't say that I'm an expert, no, because of your many, many questions that we cannot answer. I mean, we cannot answer in terms of, not just in terms of time, but in terms of know-how. But you yourself, we will all learn from each other. Kaya maganda po ang aking karanasan ngayong umagang ito dahil kahit katanungan yan, may na parang, ano, hindi ko yan natatanong sa sarili ko. Siguro pwede kong i-add yun sa aking modules. Yun. So maraming salamat po sa iyong pagbabahagi. Thank you po.
Thank you po, Ma'am Rosan. And I'm sure our participants, all of you will agree with me in saying that this has really been a productive morning for all of us. So let us thank our speakers for imparting their very valuable ideas, no, with all of us this morning. So just to give a brief summary of what we have covered this morning, we on our first topic on given to us by Associate Professor Josephine Junicio. She talked about the characteristics of the Gen Z learners, and of course delved into the different topics included in the course Understanding the Self. She talked about the relevance of this course, the application of learning outcomes to the lives of our Gen Z students, and the different perspectives on the self, and the various ways by which the concept of self was understood throughout history by different philosophers. She also compared Western ideas from Eastern views, and also examined the idea of the physical self, including the views on body image, skin color, etc., and how these views affect people themselves, and also gender roles and stereotypes, their views on but their material self, their spiritual self, or the inner self, and the political self, and most importantly, the digital self, which is now we are discovering. Prof. Joe also talked about the UP counterpart of this course, the Self and Society, SAS1, no, or Self and Society course, which is offered in the different constituent units of the university. Finally, she shared with us various online tools and resources for interactive sessions to get feedback, the use of Jamboard, Mentimeter, and Slido, so that our sessions, our online sessions, will be more interactive. The second talk given by Assistant Professor Echevarri focused on mental health, no? And it complemented very much the talk given by Prof. Joe. The focus on mental health in the context of the digital world, the pandemic, the political and economic issues of our time. Ma'am Rosan shared how she teaches her class by beginning with a personal temperature, and I think most of us appreciated this, no? The importance of the kamustahan and the use of the Mentimeter just to know how our students are doing. She also shared with us the definition of mental health, and it being a state of well-being, and focused on the idea of helping our students be aware of their mental health situation, no, by means of being literate in this aspect. So she talked about the mental health literacy of our students. She also shared various resources and activities, particularly in learning about the self in a digital world. So this was the focus of Ma'am Rosan, in understanding the different generations, and particularly Gen Z, and understanding their characteristics. So to address the observation that there seems to be a gap between the teacher and the student, no, in the classroom in terms of how things are done. So also the very important idea of the impact of the use of social media on people, especially the young people, and the importance of personal interaction in everyday life. Finally, our role as teachers in helping the Gen Z cope with the impact of social media, especially in detecting fake news. And finally, in the open forum, all of these very important concepts and ideas were emphasized and reiterated and expounded on. And of course, the important takeaways are, I think, number one, for us to be, as teachers, to be understanding, patient, and deal with things with a lot of sense of humor. So that will help us and also our students. And to keep an open mind, be flexible, and be humble in seeking the help of our students whenever we are also confronted with difficulties technologically. Finally, to listen to our students as well. We have acquired a lot of tips on how to get the learning resources, how I think strategies on how to conduct our classes online or remotely. And these are very practical tips for all of us. And I'm sure that you have learned a lot. And I'd like to invite our participants to also watch the replay of the lectures in the YouTube channel and in the Facebook page of the General Education Center of UP Diliman. So at this point, I would like now to call on the director of the General Education Center of UP Diliman. May I call on Director Nancy Kimwell Gabriel for her closing remarks. Ma'am Nak?
Closing remarks na ba, ma'am, or yung certificates?
I'm sorry, the awarding of the certificates.
Sige. Siguro lagay natin si Ma'am Jo sa gilid. Pwede bang si Ma'am Jo yung nandito sa gilid ng certificate?
Baka kailangan magsalita ako, no? Para malagay ako sa gilid. Yeah.
Para pag picture ay ikaw yung katabi na certificate, hindi ako. Ayan. Okay. Sige, the General Education Center, Office of the Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs, University of the Philippines, Diliman, and Commission on Higher Education award this certificate of appreciation to Associate Professor Josephine C. Dionisio for sharing her expertise as resource speaker in the Teach Talk, How to Manage Your Gen Z Class, Understanding the Self edition under the LINANGAN, the GE Faculty Development Extension Program, held on the 15th day of October 2021 via Zoom, YouTube, and Facebook. Signed by yours truly as the director of the GEC Center and by Professor Maria Teresa T. Payungayong, our Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs. Thank you very much, Ma'am Jo. Kukunan ko lang po kayo ng picture. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yung kay Ma'am Rosa naman na certificate. Yeah. The GEC Center, the OVCAA, the CHED award this certificate of appreciation to Assistant Prof. Rosanne Marie G. Echibare for sharing her expertise as resource speaker in the Teach Talk, How to Manage Your Gen Z Class, Understanding the Self edition under the LINANGAN, the GE Faculty Development Extension Program, signed by yours truly and our Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs, Dr. Maria Teresa T. Payungayong. Thank you very much, Ma'am Echivare. Kukunan ko lang kayo ng picture.
Daghang salamat sa tanan. Thank you to everyone.
Ayan. Ginagawa din po natin ang Certificate of Appreciation sa ating napakahusay na moderator this morning, si Professor Ruth R. Lusterio Rico, bilang moderator ng Teach Talk, How to Manage Your Gen Z Class, Understanding the Self edition under the LINANGAN, the GE Faculty Development Extension Program, signed by yours truly and our Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs, Dr. Teresa T. Payungayong. Thank you very much, Ma'am Ruth.
My pleasure po, Ma'am Nak.
Kunin ko po kayo ng picture. Yan. Okay po.
Thank you. And for the closing remarks po.
Yes. Opo. Tutuloy na po tayo sa formal na pagsasara ng ating programa. Unang-una, nais ko pong pasalamatan ng katakot-takot na pasasalamat ang ating dalawang mahusay na tagapagsalita, sina Professor Jojo Nisio and Professor Rosan Echebare. Gayon din ang ating tagapagpadaloy ngayong umaga, si Professor Ruth Lusterio Rico. Gusto ko po rin pasalamatan may 1,600 na pumasok sa ating webinar maliban pa sa mga nakinig sa YouTube at sa Facebook. Yan, at gusto ko rin pong pasalamatan ang General Education Center staff na tumatayong organizer ng ating linangan. Ang linangan po ay tatakbo pa hanggang July 2022. Buwan-buwan po ito, kaya sana ay makadalo pa rin kayo sa mga susunod na session. No? At ito po ay libre. Maari kayong magyaya ng inyong co-teachers at meron po kayong certificate sa bawat session na inyong dadaluhan. I hope you learned something from the discussion, from our engagement. Personally, napakarami kong baon, napakarami kong takeaway, kaya gusto ko ng mga ganitong engagement kasi palaging ang daming natututunan. No? And I realized napaka-interdisciplinary ng understanding the self at walang isang disiplina lang ang pwedeng mag-claim na sila lang ang pwedeng magturo ng understanding the self. No? Yung content napaka-interconnected ng iba't ibang disiplina, psychology, sociology, no, women's studies, gender studies, anthropology, yung kultura, psikolohiyang Pilipino. Kaya ano siya, no, hitik na hitik yung ating makukuha ngayon. At habang nakikinig na ako, no, ang dami palang pwede talagang ma-unpack at sa sarili at ma-discuss dito, no. Isip ko, ang ganda rin palang avenue nito para pag-usapan bakit tayo nawawala ng confidence, bakit ganito tayo ngayon, di ba? Bakit tayo minsan may stage fright at na di ba kahit matanda na tayo, na-feel nyo ba yon kahit teacher pa kayo? Tapos yung mga konsepto ng sexism, racism, gender sensitivity, yung rape culture, yung escapist and consumerist culture, no, paano magkakaroon ng inner peace, paano tayo makikilahok bilang mamamayan ng bayang ito, at paano tayo magiging responsable sa mga choices natin. And ultimately, yung reiteration ng mga Filipino values natin, yung sense of kapwa natin, at yung pagkakaroon ng malinis na loob na kailangan din, no? Sa sitwasyon ng pandemic at sa darating na eleksyon, ano, pagpili ng malinis na mga mamumuno para magkaroon naman tayo ng good governance. I think kailangang ini-interrogate din natin yan sa ating klase. Ayan, sa susunod pong buwan, ang paksa naman natin, sana maka-attend kayo, ay may pamagat na VAC to School. No, VACC yung VAC. Pero parang back to school. Kasi po ito ay back to school doing blended learning for GE courses. Yan, may dalawang paksa pong tatalakayin dito. Preparasyon, una, ng blended learning, yung kombinasyon ng residential or physical class at saka remote learning at the same time. At pangalawa, ano ba dapat yung health and safety protocols ano dapat ang in place at ano dapat ang i-observe, i-reiterate, i-demand natin para manatiling ligtas tayo bilang nagtuturo at ang ating mga estudyante, administrador at staff sa universidad. So yun lamang po, magkita-kita tayo sa November 15. Ganon din po ang oras. Monday po yan, 9 to 12 a.m. Marami pong salamat. Wala akong reaction button kaya hindi ako makapag-virtual clap. Palakpakan natin ang ating mga tagapagsalita, moderator at organizer sa umagang ito. Salamat po ng marami. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Ingat po tayong lahat. Salamat po.
Ingat po tayo lagi. Huwag niyo pong kalimutang sagutan ang inyong evaluation form para po kayo ay makakuha ng certificate. Ma'am Ruth, back to you.
Salamat po.
Siguro
Stay safe po sa lahat. Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, mag-picture taking po tayo.
Sige po.
Analyst po.
Ma'am Jo.
Okay, sandali lang po. Nag-exit na kasi yung yung laptop ko. Exit. Okay.
Teka, i-gallery natin. Ayan. Wow, dilaw tayo at wala naman
Yung pink ko naging puti eh.
Tuturin ako ng picture. 1, 2, 3. Para sa mga naririto pa hindi pa nakakalabas, ito po ang staff ng GEC. Si Sarduca po ang overall head ng Linangan. Yan, si Chris Tarka, ang nakita nyo kanina, ang nag-a-assist, assistant moderator, si Hazeline, si Kenrick, at ang aming AO, si Jerome Cruz. Thank you very much, guys.